Hi, I'm Ben.
And I'm Josh.
And this is the Bad Magic Podcast, a podcast about games, life, and other things. And welcome to episode 109.
Ben, I'm sorry to tell you this, but I have failed. I have failed in my only solid duty as the podcast co-host in trying to find...
How have you failed?
So, longtime listeners will know it's been my shtick for a long time. I don't even know how we started this, but I'll take the episode number and I'll find something interesting that is like adjacent or associated with that number.
I'll tell you how it started. I had a thing. I had several things, and you're like, I want a thing. And that was your thing. And it was a good thing.
Oh, it was just me throwing a tantrum. Yeah, that sounds like me.
My things have all run their course. Has your thing run its course, Josh?
No. Because here's the fun thing about numbers, Ben. They just keep going up. There are always going to be more numbers after the numbers. But some numbers are better than others. Some of them aren't winners. And unfortunately, 109... From all of my research, 109 is one of those not winning numbers.
Is it a prime number? I think it is.
Well, that's the thing.
I'm looking for by 3.
I'm looking for interesting facts about numbers, and there are so few listeners that care whether 109 is a prime, and there's no way it is. That like I just can't. So I just have like I'm looking for things about 109, and I've got like so in math. While we're talking about math, 1 over 109, so 1/109th, like as a fraction, has 108 decimal points if you put it in decimal form.
Wow.
Woo, that's interesting. The Messerschmitt Bf 109, I'll tell you what, that thing wouldn't stop popping up in my Googles. It was a German fighter plane that, his first flight was in 1935, and then it started flying in 1937 towards the end of World War II. World War II buffs probably appreciate the Messerschmitt 109, but I'm over here just kind of meh. Even my beloved tax code has failed me because 26 U.S. Code subsection 109, all that says is that if you're leasing a property and the person that you're leasing it to makes the property better, when they stop leasing the property, you don't have to recognize the improvement as income.
Okay.
That's really cool to me, but nobody's going to care about that. And I don't think it's particularly interesting.
Yeah, you can tick me off the list of people interested in that aspect of the number 109.
For the few people, and when I say few, I mean like maybe the one person who's asking, well, what does happen to the property that was improved? You just add it to the basis and it increases its value when you go to sell it later.
All right, Josh, I want to follow up on something. So in the last episode, you and I had, we'll say, a friendly debate about student loans and funding and the cost of college in America. And just to follow up on that, just last week, President Joe Biden announced another wave of federal student loan forgiveness that allowed another 125,000 borrowers and erased $9 billion in debt. I think he's wisely capitalizing on all the chaos that's happening in Congress right now because the Republicans ousted the Speaker of the House. He's like, well, we'll just sneak through all the student loan forgiveness. But
while you guys are throwing food and stuff at each other over there, I'm just going to slide in some legislation and hope nobody notices.
Yeah, so no issues here. I wish we could get to a place where we were just helping fund it up front instead of like dangling the debt over people's heads for decades and then hoping the government all can see eye to eye and forgive it after the fact. But one step at a time.
Yeah, that ties into so many different things that, and you know what? In the vein of I don't want to have another very arguey episode, I'm just going to let this one go. I'm like, Ben, you know what? Yeah, that sounds like a good future.
Okay, well, it's something we don't need to argue about, and that is on this podcast, 10 episodes ago, you and I talked about the changes that Major League Baseball was introducing for the 2023 season, one of which was increasing the size of the bases, another which was an introduction of the pitch clock for reducing the time of the match. Last year, there was 390 games that went over 3.5 hours. So we've now had a complete Major League Baseball season in the books. We can crunch the numbers, do the math, and find out what the impact has been. This year, there were 9 games that went over 3.5 hours instead of 390. So overall, on average, that reduced the length of a Major League Baseball game by 24 minutes to now an average of just 2 hours and 40 minutes.
I'll tell you, the couple of games that I went to this season, it did feel like the game was just clicking along much faster than other seasons where it felt like there was a lot of dead time, which I mean, on the one hand, it's nice because it gets over with and you can go home. But on the other hand, like when I go to a game, I just want to sit there. Like I'm just going to relax and just watch people do nothing for the next however long I can get away with. Because I can justify my inaction because I'm watching a baseball game. So this game being shorter might not be the best.
Baseball showing its roots in cricket, which just goes on for days and days because no one had anything else to do and it's not that strenuous anyway.
I mean, that's a classic colonial British game. It's like, oh, we've already conquered everything. There's nothing really to do. Let's just play a game for the next 4 days.
Yeah, exactly. Very good perspective there. Unless you're a Diamondback season ticket holder, though, and you're just like you and me, you just go to a game every now and then, go to a Cardinals game or a Diamondbacks game. How are the Diamondbacks doing, by the way?
They are in the postseason, sir. You're asking this question. You got a big smile on your face. You already know, you jerk.
Yeah, I love watching them jump in the pool.
So nobody expected them to do anything in the postseason, but then they beat the Brewers for the wild card, I think. I don't pay close enough attention to know the actual terms. And then second round of the postseason, like they're playing the Dodgers, and we're like, oh, well, that's the end of that. They swept the Dodgers. It was crazy. They set a record for the most home runs in one inning in a postseason Major League Baseball game at 4. And Ben, I was watching that game, and it was psychotic. The pitcher threw like 3 home runs, like 3 batters, 3 home runs, and it was the place was exploding and on fire. And then the 4th batter gets up and he hits a home run, and they call it a home run. It's really close to the foul pole, but they call it a home run, and he rounds the bases. Then they review it and they say, nope, never mind. Sorry, it was foul. Come on back. We're going to reset. That's actually a strike. The next pitch, he hit a home run that was fair. It was awesome. Crazy.
Oh man, I bet the place just went nuts. No wonder they all ran out and jumped in the pool. All right, I'll find a video of that and link in the show notes, especially for our listeners that don't watch baseball. Maybe this will get you. Baseball just made a big step. So there's a quote in this article I was reading from one of the players, because I hadn't considered, you and I might just go every couple of weeks and be like, I just want to chill out and watch the game. But for the players, they don't mind getting home, 24 minutes earlier every day. So Minnesota shortstop Carlos Correa said, I think the changes are here to stay. Now, one other change you and I talked about on the podcast is that the impact of increasing the size of the bases by 6 inches decreased the length between the bases by a full foot. And we wondered speculatively on the podcast if that could potentially have an impact on stolen bases.
It wasn't a whole foot. It was 6 inches total, like 3 inches on each side. So. But
okay. Got
that's what you're talking about is the speculation of like, because we said that like, 6 inches, what's that going to do? How many stolen bases are decided by less than 6 inches? And then we both stopped and went, wait, that's actually probably kind of high.
Yeah. Do you want to hear the impact?
I do.
Stolen base count has been the highest in nearly 40 years.
Oh, and you see stolen bases are exciting. People like seeing bases that get stolen. So that's really cool.
The games are shorter and more exciting. And so here we go into the postseason. Josh, yesterday, I think, was that huge annular solar eclipse we talked about last episode. I'm on the wrong side of the world to see it. How did it go there in Arizona?
So we aren't in the path of the total eclipse. It wasn't going to be like a total eclipse. It was because the moon's in the wrong part of its weird orbit. So it wasn't going to completely cover the sun. You were going to get a cool
They're not exactly 108 times. It's like 107.9.
Well, the orbit of the moon is all wibbly wobbly, and that's why you get like the super moons, and it comes in and out. But so it was at a point where there was just going to be this tiny rim of fire. They call it the ring of fire around the outside once it went over the full coverage of the sun. We weren't in a place where we could see the ring of fire. We were off in like the 80% coverage or something, I think. And so we bought like the solar eclipse glasses. We made sure that they were up to the ISO specifications for looking straight into the sun. We set up beach chairs and a blanket in our backyard, and we just sat out there for an hour and watched the sun slowly turn into the Cheshire Cat with like almost like a waning or waxing moon, like a crescent moon. And what's really funny
when you say
is
were your kids in school?
Oh no! It was Saturday, man. So
okay.
Saturday morning, we got everybody go outside. We're gonna stare directly into the sun. Don't do this on normal days. So we had some cool cardboard sunglasses, and we're staring at the sun and just discussing different science-y things. And what was kind of interesting is then it turned into a conversation about Alice in Wonderland because my daughter didn't know what the Cheshire Cat reference was. It was just like this meandering conversation with the kids and just some cool family time. At one point, though, we looked up and we saw, okay, it is now 9:31. This is the most covered that the sun is going to be. And we looked around, and even though it was like between 80 and 90% covered, it was maybe slightly dimmer outside. It was almost as if it was like a slightly cloudy day. And like you look at it,
10% reduction in brightness.
Yeah. And I'm looking at it through the glasses, and there's only, like a sliver of sun left. I'm like, man, the sun is bright. And then my daughter had the quote of the week when she looked around and she goes, "It's not dark outside. The science has failed me." Like that's what she said, and it was hilarious.
Good job, Jane. I remember when we saw the last one, whatever it was, 5-6 years ago, and we were in a kind of a park where there was lots of trees around, and right near the peak of it, all of the shadows from all of the leaves made the little crescent all over the ground and every object. Were you near anything where you could have seen that effect?
I was probably around things where I could have seen that effect if I'd known to go up and go look for it. I didn't see it until later in the day. I was seeing pictures on social media of people taking photos of that exact phenomenon that you're talking about.
Yeah, really cool. All right, I'll put one in the show notes on our Facebook page.
The other cool one I saw on social media was somebody had a disco ball and sat it in their windowsill, and then in their house was all the tiny little reflections of exactly what the solar eclipse looked like coming off of the disco ball.
That's such a great idea.
That was really cool.
Nice.
Listeners, don't look directly at the sun. Look at it indirectly.
Through a disco ball. Brilliant. So we also can't not mention the fact that unexpectedly, since the last time we talked, war has broken out in the Middle East. I mean, there's always something going on, but in this case, in the Gaza Strip in southern Israel, Hamas broke into Israel and kidnapped and killed a bunch of people, and then Israel is in the process of retaliating, and just lots of horrible things are going on. Which, without commenting on any of that politically, it definitely changed my status over here in the Middle East during this deployment. If you're following along in the program, you know that I'm in Kuwait right now.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, like you said, war broke out in the Middle East, and I feel like you're in the Middle East. So how's that working out for you?
Yeah, well, sticking to just like our open source public policy kind of things, the United States is a very public supporter and ally of Israel, and that's part of the reason for our presence in this region, so that if something like this were to happen, our existence and presence in this part of the world is a stabilizing factor to prevent the war from expanding and growing larger. And so along those lines, as soon as the conflict kicked off, the Secretary of Defense came out, moved a bunch of additional forces into theater to let all of our allies and all of the potential combatants in the region know to stay calm.
I had 3 thoughts when I first heard about what is happening in the Middle East. And the first one was just one of overwhelming sadness that these kinds of atrocities still happen in modern days and age. Like all the diplomatic and political tools and the open channels of communication, horrible things still happen. And it's a travesty. The second thought was, oh crap, Ben is totally going to get extended again. There's no way he's coming back home on time. And then the third thought was, oh crap, if this gets worse, he's totally getting stop-lossed and he's never getting out of the military.
Yeah, that's what you think. And they're saying it's funny because I've mentioned, so I think since the last time we recorded, I actually put in my retirement paperwork, but it still hasn't gone all the way through. It's hit a couple of bureaucratic red tape places, and it's not progressing.
I wouldn't know anything about those kinds of bureaucratic hurdles.
I don't know. This is a great example of one of the really frustrating things about being in the military is this process has a lot to it, but it's not like you practice. Like when you go to retire, it's the first and only time you're going to do it. And so you start and it's hard and you're bad at it. And they're like, don't you know? But the people who are asking you that do it every day. But any customer they have is by definition a first and only time customer.
Well, that, and when you go to, like, I want to separate from the military. Like, you go to your personnel squadron. Like, I need to quit. And they hand you, like, 50 pages of paper. And it's like, okay, follow these steps. but each step is an entire process that, like, it's like one checkbox. Oh, talk to this person at this place. That sounds super easy. And you go to that place and they hand you another 10 pages. Like,
packet.
Okay, fill all this out. And then we will check off your one box on this 50-page checklist.
Yeah, it's like that. So I was kind of looking at my deployment in like a 3-act structure. The first act was when I got here. It was my first month. It was the last month of the outgoing commander. The ops tempo was really high. There was a change of command like every other day. The boss was trying to finalize all the last things and get the unit ready for the new commander to come in place. And I didn't know which way was up, and I wasn't sleeping. I swear, Josh, I did not take a bathroom break at work for 3 weeks.
No, but you did send plenty emails to the entire wing that you didn't mean to. Never gonna let you live that one down.
And I still managed to record and edit an episode of Bad at Magic. So just listeners, I want you to know how committed we are to producing content on our schedule.
Ben is going to record and edit the podcast before he takes a bathroom break. That's how committed we are.
So then the second act was when the new commander arrived and we got her bedded down and in place and stuff. And I thought the third act was going to be the 1st of October when all of the old people that I was with are leaving and the new people are starting to arrive, but I'm not leaving with them. But then last weekend when things kicked off in Israel, it changed the definition of what the third act's going to be.
Yeah, I'll bet.
It changed a lot of things. So new third act, which is interesting because I think we're going to talk about that today when we review the movie Office Space. So we'll get to that in a minute. However, so the one thing I want to say about that is with all of the people that I came here with leaving now, there's this interesting thing that happens where in the military, you're supposed to be a cog in a machine, right? And we want the machine to keep running, but the machine won't keep running if you leave the same cogs in it all the time. So every 6 to 12 months, you take out the old cogs and put in the new cogs, and the machine keeps running. Hopefully, the new cog that you put in is the same as the old cog, and the machine keeps doing the same thing. You with me so far?
I'm with you. I could take a lot of. I don't agree entirely with your analogy, but I'm going to let you land your plane. So yes, like cogs in a machine.
So you got a machine running. You're like, all right, we can't just keep the same cogs in the machine forever because those will run down and then the machine will break.
Or God forbid they become well oiled and the machine works better.
Okay, then I need to be more explicit. I'm talking about the fact that if you deploy someone over here, you can't just leave them here for 3, 5, 10, 20 years. Like we were in Afghanistan for 20 years. Would we just send someone there for 20 years and leave them there for 20 years? No.
We sent Army guys there for 18 months at a time and then gave them 2 months home and then sent them back for another 18 months. So, I mean, kind of.
Yeah, but it's not necessarily the same ones. That's the thing about it. You're swapping out the parts.
Okay.
And when you do it, it gives them time to fix them up and bring them back newish. Anyway, the machine keeps running. In that, there's always going to be this rough part in the transition period. Do you just swap them out a little bit at a time, or do you swap them out all at once, like ripping off a Band-Aid and doing it as fast as possible? And what we do is over about the course of a month, you kind of have all the old people go out and the new people come in, and they overlap enough to transition over their responsibilities and the things that they know to the new people, so that then hopefully after this month is over, you have this dip in productivity and then back up to a sustainment level. And over the course of a year, you have kind of 2 ineffective months and 10 effective months ish.
So yeah, that's the thing. That's the point that we need to figure out is like when you're talking about your 3-act structure for your deployment, like you can also think of that in terms of productivity. And that first month, first 6 weeks, you're really still trying to figure out exactly what it is that you're supposed to be doing. Then you perform at your peak for 3 or 4 months, and the ops tempo is so high that that's about as long as they can expect you to maintain that. And then inevitably everybody checks out in the last 6 weeks. Like, man, whatever, I'm getting out of here. Who cares?
Dips a little bit towards the end.
So the idea being that if we overlap all of these bell curves of productivity, then theoretically the average productivity should still always be somewhere towards the top.
Well said. And also mathematic and not an analogy. So good on you. The thing I want to pull out of all of this is the nuance that there's always a little bit of friction when you're a cog and you're replacing another cog, where if you were to take those 2 cogs out and line them up, they're not the same, because no 2 people are the same. Yeah, I'm coming here and I'm the same rank as the person I'm replacing, and maybe we're both the same specialty code, which means we have the same training and background. And so they were doing a job and I'm just here to do their job and I take over where they left off. And in theory, it should be the exact same thing. But in actuality, everybody has different backgrounds, different personalities, different things they're good at. And so maybe there were areas that the person you're replacing wasn't very good at and you can be better at. And maybe there are areas they were really good at and you're not going to be as good at. But like you said, in aggregate, in average, it all works out. The thing is, in that transition period, there's a little bit of friction. You see the other person's failings, they see your failings, and if all you focused on was that, it would just look like they're a dirtbag and I'm the good guy from both sides.
That exact thing happened to me. I deployed and I was replacing somebody. We were at the same base for about a week, and he walked me through his day-to-day, and the whole time I'm thinking, man, this guy could be doing so much more. This guy could be out and like making a real impact. And when he left, I started making that impact. And then 6 months later, I was so done that my replacement came in and I was the same way that the old guy was. Like, oh yeah, here's what you have to do to get by day to day. And I could see it in his face, like, you should be doing so much more that you aren't. And I'm like, wait 6 months, you'll get it.
Okay, good. So you compared that on the time scale of the just after 6 months, you're exhausted and you can't sustain that high level for that long and you're going to be tired at the end no matter what. So if you combine what I said about personalities and expertise being different and what you said about how there's just this natural ebb and flow of effort and that you're able to give as a human being, all of that combines to, if you focus just on the negative, it looks like your new guy coming in goes, he sees all your personal failings and he sees the fact that you're tired and he thinks you suck and that he's the good one. And that interaction causes a bit of friction in the overlap period. Like, I just want to get you tired, lazy, incompetent dirtbag out of here so that I can do the job we're here to do. Okay. I guess that's not a problem, but I've just learned that I don't think that this machine runs in spite of people. I think it runs because of people. And you can appreciate what everyone gives. Even if they're socially awkward, not as qualified, everybody has something that they do to contribute. I know of very few people that are a net negative. I can't think of any. Okay.
And that's because you're just such a nice guy. And I love your super cold take that the work gets done because people do the work. Like, that's an excellent observation. Thank you for that. It's just what you're talking about is H of G. This friction period you're talking about is person comes in with these great expectations of getting out of their home unit, like they're changing their location, they're jazzed about getting all that tax-free extra money. And so they are coming in and they're pumped. And they're meeting somebody that's been there in the slog doing it for a long time. And it's not a difference in incompetence. It's not a difference in effort that they could put out. It's a difference in just energy and excitement for being there at that moment. Yeah. And so what you're talking about is there's two ways to take that. Like, oh, this guy's a complete dirtbag. That's the negative way. Or you can do the H of G and be like, oh, hey, this guy's been here. He's been in the slog. He's just running down. I'm going to step in and I'm going to pick up whatever I think that he may have dropped, real or imagined, and we're going to press on.
Yeah, exactly. And I found that if I take that second approach that you just described, it makes it so much smoother. I just be really appreciative of the outgoing guy, try to recognize the things that he did well, figure out the areas that I need to help pick up and carry on with what it is we're doing. And it doesn't have to be toxic. It doesn't have to be acrimonious. It can just be grateful that we're on the same team and carry on the fight.
I like to not put any emotional context into that at all. Like, if you're coming into a new job and you sit down like, okay, that's what the last guy did. Okay, let me look at what I'm supposed to be doing and let me decide what I am going to do. I don't care what the last guy did. I'm the guy. Somebody like, oh, well, the last guy didn't do it that way. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. Was he still here? Is he in the room? Is he running this meeting? No, that's me. So we're going to forget about what the last guy talked about, and we're going to focus on this now.
We have a hard time as a people doing that. For instance, sitting right next to me is the chief's enlisted aide, and one of the commanders came into the office this morning, and she had just gotten here like at 4 a.m. this morning. And he comes in and he looks at her and he goes, "Oh, you're the new Flash," which shows this cultural thing that, like, I appreciated that person. I liked them, and that my expectations are set at that level. So my assessment of you will be based on my assessment of that person.
Now, to be clear, this person pointed at another person that was sitting in the same desk that the old person was. And that the person in authority said, oh, they didn't say, you are the new enlisted aide to the chief, which is the position. He said, you are the new Flash, and named the last guy that was sitting there. So
right.
So just from that statement, you can say that the bar has been set not by the position and what the duties of that position are, but by the last guy that did it. And that's not a great place to be if you're the one he's pointing at.
That's kind of the point I'm getting at, that the way this machine functions, it's so complicated. We need cognitive shortcuts. So we can't go, oh, well, I know that this machine works because all of these processes and procedures and guidelines and regulations and command structure and all of that means that these things happen and all these people need. No, I knew that guy was there and did some things, and now this person's replacing that guy. And that's easier for us to grok as a human being.
Yeah, until 3 months from now, when that new enlisted aide is like weeping in somebody's office, like, I'll never be Flash. Why does he keep comparing me to Flash?
Yeah, and that could be a problem. And the reason I brought this up is I also have seen some other positions where there's been a bit more friction where in expectations. And I don't look at the outgoing guys as like, I don't think we need to diminish what they did. No one came here and just coasted. Everyone sacrificed, everyone pushed, everyone worked towards the goal. We can appreciate the contribution they made. And if there's things that we need to pick up and carry on, then we can do that too.
Man, like I'm on the outside now, and I realized I had a lot of problems when I was in the military that I didn't recognize until after I got out. And I just want to rain on your parade. Like, I just want to come in here and just give like a long diatribe about misaligned incentives and non-permanent like people in authority just doing whatever they want without having to deal with the repercussions of their decisions. But again, you know what? We were too argumentative last episode. I'm gonna make an effort for our relationship to just let some of the more of this stuff go. So let's just move on.
Well, thanks. Thanks to everyone that's departing in this rotation. I'll miss you. I love you. I'm glad for the new guys that are here. The job gets done because everyone contributes. Josh,
everyone, hang on before you go. Everyone that just heard that and realized, oh, he's talking to me. Take it with a grain of salt. There's a 50% chance he's super happy that you're leaving, that he'll never have to see you again.
All right, Josh, we need to talk about something important. In fact, longtime listeners of this podcast are probably starting to get a bit alarmed. They're wondering if everything is okay in the world because, Josh, it is the middle of the month of October, and on the Bad at Magic podcast, we have not yet talked about the Fleshman family plan for Halloween costumes. What on earth is going on?
I thought you were building up to something completely different. Okay. So, yes, the Fleshman family Halloween costumes. We did what we always do, and we decided on what the costumes were going to be in first quarter of 2023. And we had like multiple family meetings. We discussed options.
Yes, this is it. I don't know why. We've just failed to talk about this on the podcast.
So I don't know how we got here. I've forgotten the deliberation because I'm so deep into it that it doesn't matter how we started. This is where we are now. And we settled on Star Wars again, but a very specific slice of Star Wars history. My son has declared that our costumes all must come from the Clone Wars era of Star Wars. So for people that watch the movies, that's between episodes 2 and 3 of the prequels. Like, all of our costumes have to come from that gap of time. Okay. My wife decided that she was going to be in charge of the female costumes, and she left the male costumes in my hands. And my fumbling, can't juggle worth anything hands. So she has already done. Like, they're done. Like, my daughter's costume, my wife's costume is ready.
I want to go back to the deliberations. I know you said you forgot about it, but I remember asking you about this when it happened. And I'm like, but haven't you done this already? And you said, Ben, that's not one of the rules.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. You want to talk. So yes, we every year, for new listeners, people don't know this, we all 4 of us wear costumes, me, my wife, and my 2 kids. And we always do themed costumes that we're all like a group of costumed people together. One year we did Mandalorians, and every one of us wore custom Mandalorian armor, which was awesome. I still love wearing it.
It was awesome.
One year we did The Legend of Zelda. So me and my son were both bad guys from Zelda. My wife was Link, and my daughter was the princess Zelda. One year we did Hollow Knight. which I think one person, as we were walking around the street, like identified, oh, it's Hollow Knight. And everyone else just like, you guys look spooky. Like, we'll settle for that.
You liked it.
I did. I was so jazzed when that kid recognized this, though. There was one year we did Bleach, which is an anime that my wife and I watched when we were together in our 20s, when we could, watch stupid things without our kids asking, what is this? Nobody, I don't think anybody recognized this that year, but we appreciate it, and I thought it was super cool. We did do Star Wars a long time ago, where my son, my wife, and I all dressed up as stormtroopers, and then my daughter was the tiniest, cutest Darth Vader. So that was kind of fun.
Okay, so this is your third take on Star Wars, but you wanted to constrain it to a specific part of the canon.
Yes, and as you referenced earlier, it's we can redo themes. That's no problem. I think my only internal rule is I'm going to try not to redo a specific costume. I have no problem being Star Wars multiple years in a row. I just don't want to be the same Star Wars every year. That just seems like...
So you're never going to be like, okay, I'm tired, I'm busy, I'm just going to go back to the closet and get my old costume and see if it still fits.
So I did that when I was single. When I first got into the military, the first Halloween year, I bought a full head-to-toe ninja costume with like the split-toed boots and like a cool mask and a gi.
I remember that costume.
Yeah, you remember that costume because I wore it every year for Halloween until I got married. But now I have kids, and kids like Halloween, and this is
part of the parental sacrifice to make the magic for the young ones.
Okay, and I'm going to bare my soul a little bit, because secretly deep down, Ben, like everybody knows I have way too many hobbies, and I'm a hobby junkie, and I'll move from one to the other, but deep in my bones, I'm always like on social media or looking at pictures, and I see the people that dress up to the nines in some character costume at like the different Comic-Con conventions or at the Magicons, and every time I see something like that, I'm like, I could totally do that, and it would be awesome. And so I'm like, I'm a closet cosplayer, I think. I haven't. So this is a socially acceptable time where it makes sense for a grown man to invest resources into a goofy, silly costume. And I have the excuse of like, why are you spending so much time and effort on a costume? I can point at my kids and be like,
it's for the kids.
It's for the kids. I'm being a good dad. You can't judge me. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Okay, so you got 2 weeks left. How's it coming?
Like I said, my wife has finished the costumes for both for herself and my daughter. My costume is probably, I'm going to call it 75 to 80% done. And my son's costume is between 60 and 70% done. Like it's, okay. He's going to be, no spoilers. Like you'll see pictures in the podcast in like a month from now. He's going to be Captain Rex from the Clone Wars cartoons, which is a named character, but he's a clone trooper. He's got very custom armor. And so I'm making Stormtrooper armor, like legit Stormtrooper armor from cosplay foam, start to finish, all from scratch. And so I'm struggling. Like there's a lot of stuff that I still haven't done yet but I'm getting there. It's getting there.
So yours is done. You're just focused on Carter's?
Mine's not done. No. Mine is not done. But mine is done enough that I can whip it together in like half an hour and like be passable. It wouldn't be good, but it would be passable. So I'm focused on his to make sure his gets done and is good before I make mine finished.
This is an interesting approach. I saw this thing. I'll see if I can find the video of it where it showed about the ways that like computers draw things. Now, I'm not remembering enough of it to describe it, but I remember it showing a painting where like you could do it all in detail all the way and scan across it, or you could do multiple passes and fill it in. And that sounds like what you're doing here. You're just getting everyone up to a certain level, and then, all right, now I need to get this one up. We'll get everyone up to 80%, and now that we'll get this one to 100% and go back and get mine up to 100%.
Well, mine's different because I had a plan. And like, I'm going to be this character. And I decided in first quarter, I'm going to be this character. And my wife goes, are you sure? That is super ambitious. I'm like, nah, I've got plenty of time. And then all through summer.
Give our audience some credit. What's the character?
Okay, so the character I originally was going to be was General Grievous.
Jeez.
Yeah, the robot with 4 arms. Yeah, that guy. I had a plan, and I still think I could have pulled it off, if I had time. Or if I wasn't the way that I was. But as time progressed, we got into third quarter. My wife's like, so, you haven't even started on that incredibly ambitious costume that you said you were going to make for yourself. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. I'm just going to settle and come to reality right now that I'm going to need to lower my expectations. And so I picked a different
Your wife
character.
was serving one of the primary functions of wives, which is bring your husband down to earth.
Yes, it tempered the expectations. I settled on a different character, and that character's costume is much more focused on clothing. And so I was able to spend $50 on Amazon and get the 80% complete. Like the major elements I already have. Everything else is just gravy, right? So like the finishing touches, that's the last 20% to take it from, oh, I know who you are, to, ooh, that's a good costume. That's the 20% that's unfinished for mine. So
like, do you remember when I was Fat Thor? Like, that costume's super easy. I already had the plaid pajama bottoms. I just got the blue hoodie and the red robe and a blonde wig, and I was good to go. Oh, and I got a pair of gray Crocs, which I'm still wearing to this day.
I love the origin of Crocs. But yes, anyway, that is the state of costumes in the Fleshman household for Halloween, which is coming up way too fast.
Yeah. All right. Well, good luck with that. Can't wait to see the photos. Josh, I'm remiss. There's something we failed to do. So a year ago, you and I went to the 30th anniversary of Magic in Las Vegas. It was the first big event post-COVID. My sons were there. You were there. We did the cosplay. We did the events. We did everything. We talked about it in great length on this podcast. A year later, I'm deployed to the Middle East. It was coming time, and you decided you were going to go to the annual Magic convention in Las Vegas without me. It happened since we recorded episode 108, but we forgot to talk about it. So let's take a minute.
Well, now hang on a second. We didn't exactly forget to talk about it. I removed it from the show notes because I was still under NDA. That NDA expired last week, and so I can now pronounce that I am actually the world champion of Magic. I won the world tournament while I was there at Magic Vegas. Didn't you hear about this? It was live streamed on the internet.
I didn't.
I'm completely lying. That's not a thing. No, I did not. I did not win any major prizes like that other people would consider major prizes. I won everything. I feel like I walked out of that place such a winner, which is rare for going to Vegas. But yeah, it was. Where do you want to start?
Okay, so we're having some trouble with your registration. Were your fears realized? Did everything work smoothly from a technological and organizational point of view?
Right. And so the short version of that story is that I was chomping at the bit to make sure I got tickets to things because they sold out very quickly last year. And so I was on the website refreshing constantly until one day they popped up. I bought all my tickets. And then later that day, all of the tickets were taken down off of the website and they didn't reappear for like another week. And so I was concerned that they had changed something in the background or that my tickets weren't going to be valid. Turns out that was completely unsubstantiated. When I did get there eventually, I sat down and I punched in the code for the first event and hit it, and then it did the little swirly dots thing, and I'm just crossing all my fingers like, oh, I really hope this goes through. And it popped up, bing, you are registered for the event, waiting for the coordinator to start it. And I threw my hands in the air like, yes, I didn't waste $200 on things that don't exist.
Nice. Okay, so how was it? Was it improved from last year? Had they figured things out?
So, honestly, Ben, yes. It was night and day difference from the event that you and I went to. So when we went to it last year, it was in a weird place, the World Market or World Center or something, like way off the strip all by itself. There was no hotels around it. It was difficult to get to. There was no good thoroughfares. Like it wasn't even set up for traffic to be able to flow there.
I remember walking on dirt paths.
Yeah, it was really just a suboptimal venue. But this year they put it back at the Las Vegas Convention Center, which is a massive multi-building complex of just enormous open spaces.
Right, and you can stay in a hotel on site and stuff like that.
Yes. Now, it was in a different part of that building than you and I are used to. So there's the West Gate in Vegas, which is at the north end of off the strip a little bit. But it is like across the street from it is the Las Vegas Convention Center. And in past years, Ben and I would just walk across one street, go through one door, and boom, there it was, 30,000 people playing Magic. This one was at the very south side of the convention center, so it was a good half to 3/4 of a mile walk from the hotel to get there. Like, it was just far enough to be annoying, but just short enough that you didn't want to take an Uber. So I actually did a TikTok about this. Every morning, I'd be walking to this convention center, and all the other Magic players had done exactly the same mental math that I had. And there was this stream of people walking from the Westgate Hotel down the street to the venue, which was down in the convention center. They split it across 2 different floors. Like each floor of this place was the same size as the entire event was last year. So there was so much more space. Like I never felt like I was packed in anywhere. All the tables.
I wonder if they deliberately limited it last year, and this year they decided to just see how high the ceiling was by just expanding it.
I think one of 2 things happened. Either they severely underestimated last year. I guess 3 things could have happened. Either they underestimated last year, they didn't put enough money and resources into it, or what I really think happened was they did it so last minute the convention center was already booked.
I have a 4th theory.
Okay.
I think that they were it was still too close on the heels of COVID, and they wanted to deliberately restrict it.
Well, then why would they get such a small area where everybody was packed in so tight?
I don't know.
All right, so the tables
But do you remember the screening we had to go through and the bracelets we had to wear and stuff like that?
I do appreciate the bracelets. I wish we did the bracelets even without the COVID. I would love to wear a visible indicator that tells people not to touch me.
Yeah. I did think I'm with you. I was hoping that particular innovation would be stickier than that.
So last year, you remember that the command center, I want to point this out. There was a whole big old section that they roped off for just
big empty area reserved for Commander, and everyone played on the outside of the ropes.
Yes, because you had to pay $300 or something to have access to that area for the weekend. Until the last day, they just this isn't working. They opened it up and they let people sit there.
Because they're struggling to monetize Magic's most popular format.
They fixed it. The command, what they did was they just had a big open play area, and they just said, if you want to play Magic, go play over here. And they set up a bunch of tables. But then they had the command center. It was all a specific color. They had colored tablecloths that said, this is for Commander players. And it was open. It was free. And this was the coolest thing. They had those little, you go to a restaurant, you get a little placard, and they'll give you a number, and you stick the number in the placard, and you stick it on your table, and then they'll bring the food out to you. They had those little placards, but they had little signs. And you could just grab one if you want. And it said, they had things on it like competitive, casual, popper only. They had different styles of Commander that people like to play. So you could grab one. Be like, oh, I'm looking for players. I'm going to stick a little casual sign in my thing. I'm going to set it down next to me. I'm going to sit down and wait for people to show up.
Yeah, I think that's the thing about the Commander format that really appeals to people is it allows for a great degree of customization in the style of the play group.
Yes, you can be hyper competitive and try to win on turn 1, or you can bring a completely jokey meme deck and just giggle with your friends.
Yeah. Huh. Did you play any Commander while you were there?
So, Ben, I did so well in all these events. I did so well. I won so many tickets. I didn't even have to borrow tickets from you to get a Commander deck from the prize wall. I was so happy with myself. So I went. I promise. It sounds like a tangent, but this is important. So at the end, the last day I was there, I took all of my tickets. I'm like, okay, I need to buy my son one of the pre-made Commander decks, and I had just enough. And so I go to the prize wall, and they had the Commander Masters Commander Precon decks, which are the premium product, the top shelf Commander Precons. And the one I wanted specifically was the colorless one called Eldrazi Unbound, because it had the highest value in cards that was in it. And it was kind of the coolest deck. It's colorless. They've never done that before. And so I walked up there and I threw my tickets down. I'm like, I want the Eldrazi Unbound Commander Precon. They said, we are sold out.
Oh, no.
Yeah. I'm like, what's the next one you got? Actually, the only one we got left is the slivers. I'm like, okay, my son will like slivers too. People that don't know what slivers are, look it up. I'm not going to explain it. Very in line with my son's thought process on how Magic is supposed to work.
Yeah. Tribal creatures with synergies.
Yes. And so I got the slivers deck. And you know what? I was pretty happy with that. I'm like, oh, he'll like this a lot. But then I went to my last event that I was going to play at the entire place. I had already put my luggage into the bellhop and everything. I was ready to leave the state. And this is the last event that I'm going to play. And it was Commander Precon Chaos. You sit down, and they hand you a random Commander pre-constructed deck. And then you play...
I can't believe you signed up for this. That's a weird thing.
Well, and this is... Because, one, it was decently cheap. Commander Precon decks are $50 or $60. And the event itself was $50. And so... I'm going to sit down and pay $50. I'm going to get a Commander Precon. I don't even really care if I have to play because I'm leaving the state. I'm probably going to have to duck out early, which I did. But I'm going to sit down. I'm going to pay for a Commander Precon deck. And so I did. And the guys were walking around handing out the Precon. And it's just, junk. Oh, that's okay. That one's junk. And then he handed me, as if he knew.
The Eldrazi one?
The Eldrazi Unbound pre-constructed deck. What
a plot twist.
It's
awesome.
you can buy it online for $100, $150 or something. And so
Okay, I was wondering where this story was going. That was so cool.
Yes, and I'm sitting like, holy crap, and everyone is like, dude, that's awesome. Like, I know, I already won. It doesn't matter if I play any games or not.
Okay, yeah, you're right. That was connected. Okay, that was oh man, that was a roller coaster of a story, Josh. All the playing aside, were there any standout things going on? What about the visual displays, the guests, the cosplay, the keynote speeches?
So the last year they had like all the different planes set up with planeswalkers cosplaying in their little areas. So like little taverns. Those
Tons
were
of
awesome.
photos on our photo album.
They didn't do a bunch of different ones. They just did one big one for Throne of Eldraine because not Throne, but Wilds of Eldraine.
They're promoting the latest set.
Right, and it was still really cool. It was set up as like a big celebration. There was like an elevated table where the royalty would sit and a couple of empty thrones where people would go and sit down and just take pictures and stuff. So it was that whole setup was pretty cool. They had a ton of vendors. They had the cosplay contest. They had the main stage where they were doing all the open talks,
keynote speeches, and forums and groups. Yeah,
they had the competitive, like where the world championship tournament was happening. Here was my only problem: is all of that stuff, everything I just described, was on the second floor. The first floor of this building was just dedicated to playing Magic, and I just lived down there. Like I went upstairs like a handful of times, but all of this happened like almost without me even being aware of it.
Got it. Yeah, I wonder if that's too much separation. They don't have the synergies of each other if you don't.
It felt like it really did kind of feel like two separate events where there was people downstairs getting together to play Magic. And then there was the pro players and all of like the stuff happening upstairs. Like
okay.
It was cooler last year when we were downstairs playing and we could kind of look over our shoulder and see what was happening on the main stage.
Yeah,
that was
like
kind of
the
nice.
World Championships was right there next to where we were playing. So I want to take a little bit of a tangent with this. So in this latest rotation, when all the people got here in October, we made a pretty big organizational change. Now, organizational changes are just the way that a commander in the military makes their mark by shifting around responsibilities and chairs with the limited amount of resources that are given to them to show that they're having an impact. And sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. I have a theory about it I call the moving the furniture theory. And that is, if you have a house with some furniture in it, and you look at it and go, this isn't great, let's move the furniture around, and you move it, and then you don't like it, and you move it back to where it was before. It wasn't a waste because you found all the change that was underneath the couch.
You are just like Mr. Brightside, man.
Yes, but I think this is important, that just the exercise of moving everyone and then moving them back again actually has a cleansing, a purging effect to it that you wouldn't have by just keeping them in the same place and trying to be like, look under the couch really good with a flashlight. So, where was I going with that? We were talking about Magic.
I just love this theory because you're not factoring in how frustrated your spouse is after you decide to move all the furniture and then you move it right back to where it was. Like, oh, well, that's good. Look at all the spare change we found. You're not factoring in the animosity that your spouse has when they're staring at you like, 76 cents was not worth the afternoon moving this furniture.
Those are the things. It isn't just that you found it, it's also that you cleaned up. But those are the things that people say. They're like, oh, well, there was the apple core rotting under there and now it's gone. So with the Magic, one of the things about that is sometimes all you're doing is changing a wire diagram. You have a wire diagram with a person at the top and the people that are subordinate to them, and then you're just shuffling around the chairs of the people underneath. With the Magic event, you kind of have a wire diagram like that. Like, here are the things. Here's where we're putting the commander players. Here's where we're putting the limited players. Here's where we're putting the constructed players. Here's the keynote stage. Here's the world championship. Here's the vendors. And you think they're all just interchangeable parts, but there's an ecosystem that develops over the course of a 5-day event that really could change a lot if you just shift a couple of those parts around. And like you said, putting a bunch of those parts on a completely separate floor in a venue really changed the ecosystem of the event.
It did. I will say that there was probably 3 or 4 vendors that must have paid out the nose to be downstairs. There was a very small vendor area downstairs and a very large vendor area upstairs. And I guarantee the people that were downstairs probably had 2 to 3 times the foot traffic that the people upstairs did.
Yeah, and of course, if they're selling things like sleeves and play supplies, that probably was really important. So that's what I was getting at. When you do a reorganization, like if all you did was change the wire diagram, no change. But when we were doing this reorganization, we moved everyone's seats around. And it did all of that in a physical and logical sense. moved desks that had never been moved in like 10 years, and it was really dusty and terrible. They ended up replacing carpets, painting walls. And now I have this brand new office with this organization that's changed. And when you move someone's seat, it really makes a big difference on them more than changing a wire diagram of who they report to. So, yeah. Did you run into any listeners of the podcast at the event? I assume you were wearing Bad at Magic branded apparel.
I wore my Bad at Magic jersey for the main day Saturday. From morning to night, I was in there rocking the Bad at Magic logo. I'm bad about going out of my way and pointing at random strangers as they're walking by. You, listen to my podcast. Like, I'm not good at that.
That's why I do it with people I sit down and play with. Did you give away any swag?
I didn't have any swag to give out at the time.
I wish I thought ahead and sent you some.
No, it was fine. I did have a couple people like mention the jersey, because the fact that it says Bad at Magic, people did stop and like, dude, I love the jersey. Thanks. It's a podcast me and my buddy do. So I did get it out that way a couple of times because people just love the branding that we got. Thank you to.
If you saw Josh's jersey at the event and now you're listening to the podcast, thanks for joining us.
We'll see. It was awesome. I was worried that I was going to be lonely, and I kind of was. Whenever I wasn't actively playing Magic, I was just kind of like, well, I wish I had somebody to talk to or hang out with.
Yeah, that's an important part. Let's talk about that for a sec, because that's the thing you do. Because in Magic, you kind of follow this heartbeat, and that is, for the most part, the matches are set up to take a maximum of 50 minutes. But a lot of the time you'll get done before 50 minutes, and there's a few that will go longer than 50 minutes. So you get about this 20 minutes of slush time between matches, where the ones that are going long and the ones that are going early, and sometimes you can use that to go get food, but you don't always need to do that. And so when you have a friend there, what you do is you keep track of them, where they're at, and then whichever one of you gets first, you go find the other one and see how they're doing, and you kind of have this heartbeat of interaction.
Well, not just that, but I had a 20-minute walk every morning from the venue to the hotel and back, and just having somebody to talk to and walk with on those parts. I did. All right, so another thing that I did. Every year we go to these things, there is this one booth, and it's Wild Bill's Soda. And their whole gimmick is if you buy one of their incredibly overpriced mugs, you get free refills of their soda for the entire time that you're there. Okay. And I broke down and I bought one of the ridiculously overpriced mugs, and it was totally worth it. Like, I bought it first thing in the morning.
Did they have Dr. Pepper on tap?
No, they had like custom sodas, and one of them they said was like a birch soda, which was like a play on root beer, and it was orange, but it tasted delicious. And Ben, like I said, I walked in there like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it first thing in the morning, and I'm going to get my value out of it. And boy, howdy, I must have drank my body weight in birch soda that day.
Okay, well, I'm glad you found a favorite. Yeah, maybe I'll try that next time. Any final thoughts on Magic Con 2023 Las Vegas?
So it was sad that I went by myself. And I'm not putting that on you. What I'm saying was, like, I love this hobby so much. I always just want to share the joy that I get from it with other people and have them reflect it and like understand and appreciate what I'm feeling. And I want to appreciate their enjoy it too. But even without that amplified reflection, even without that echo of how amazing this whole thing was, I was there by myself, and it was still an amazing trip. I had such a great time. I played so much Magic. I won so many games, and like it was just a great time.
Cool. Congrats. I'm happy for you. Wish I could have been.
Buddy.
I want to talk about one other thing. One of the last major tournaments I was at, I had an experience that was an anomaly in a good way, but it was such an anomaly that I still reflect on it sometimes. The tournament was a constructed tournament, which means that you bring a deck with you. And the thing about constructed tournaments as opposed to limited tournaments is there's a lot more of a rock, paper, scissors effect going on. And you're trying to one-up everybody else in the rock, paper, scissors game. If everybody brings rock, you want to have paper, but then you got to watch out for the guy with scissors.
That's true in that there are some decks that are very, very good against other decks, but now because Magic is Magic.
It's more nuanced than that, of course.
It's a little more. I'm just going to throw this out for listeners. There is an occasion where scissors can't beat rock, but it's very unlikely to happen.
Okay, that's exactly what I want to talk about, Josh. Wow, very good. I didn't tell you this story in advance. So late in the rounds where you're really getting down to it, and it's potentially every win or loss is a elimination from the tournament or qualification for the final rounds where the prize pool goes up significantly. I matched up with the guy, and I had brought rock, and he had paper. Like, oof. We sat down, and as soon as we both played our first card, we knew it. I was dreading the fact that my deck was a really bad matchup against his, and his was going to be really good against mine. And the stars aligned, and I beat him 2-0 handily.
Ooh, nice.
And it was... There's this moment at the end of that where you're kind of holding your breath, because what is it that you expect the other person to do, Josh? Go ahead.
Yeah, that's the thing is, because it's the sportsmanship, right? So you're over here,
yes,
you won
that's
a
what I
hard
want to talk
matchup,
about. Yes,
and so you're on cloud 9, but you don't want to get up and dance and rub his face in it. You want to revel in the victory, but you want to be a good sport because you recognize that the only way for you to have accomplished this is for that guy to have tremendously bad luck.
Yes, because I had rock and he had paper, and by all intents, he should have beat me easily.
But you can't say that either. You can't say, dude, you totally should have beat me, but you didn't. Like, it's such a
okay.
It's such a weird place to be.
So you're talking about my side of the table. Reverse the roles. What is it that I was expecting him to do?
You were expecting him to do the thing that I did yesterday when I was playing Magic Online and like just got my doors blown off. Because when you're on that side of the game where it's like, oh, I should win this game easily. The only way I'm going to lose is if I have tremendously bad luck, and then the tremendous bad luck happens to you. So it's you feel bad, and you want to externalize those bad feelings. You want to blame something. You want to blame the deck. You want to, you didn't win. I just lost. Like, you want to, I don't know, it's so easy to be really salty and angry about it.
Yes. And if you're doing that, maybe you don't realize it, or maybe you're not doing it deliberately, is you're also diminishing your opponent's accomplishment. If I say, you just got lucky, I have the better deck, I should have beaten you, but the luck element is the only thing that was on your side, and therefore I won. You're not just saying, like, I'm salty about my loss. You're also saying, you suck.
Yeah, it's that whole protecting your ego thing. Like, I have bad feelings. I don't want to internalize that as anything that has to do with my fault. So it must be somebody else's fault. And I'm going to externalize that, and I'm going to bring everyone else down with me.
So here's what happened that day. I beat this guy handily in a match both of us expected that I would lose. And I was kind of holding my breath, waiting for him to do the thing, to be salty, to be mad about it. It was so obvious he should have been. Every other time I've had this experience, they can't help but let a little bit of the salt out. And he shook my hand and he said, very well played, good match, good job. And I was so taken aback. I was so taken aback that I said, aren't you going to complain that you should have won? And he said to me, yes, but that would be poor form. For you, I'll congratulate you on your win. I'll go back and whine about my bad luck to my buddies.
Oh, what a class act.
And I was just like, that was so classy. I loved it. And why is that so exceptional?
Did he tip his top hat to you as well? Did he have to take his monocle off?
Fedora?
Yeah, exactly.
His words still resonate in my head to this day. I thought, man, that was awesome.
Man, I blew his doors off, but that guy is still the classier one walking away from this match.
He took an L and went away with a win, in my mind.
That guy lost the match, but he's winning life.
Yep. All right, what are you reading right now, Josh?
Ben,
We need to update your Wheel of Time progress meter.
I'll tell you right now, like, you putting that picture on the internet has kicked me in the pants to actually, like, listen to this at every opportunity that I have.
Okay.
I finished the first book of the Wheel of Time.
All right.
Yesterday, I just started The Great Hunt, which is book 2. A lot of very important things happen in book 2 of the Wheel of Time, but I'd be lying if I didn't say that I'm just chomping at the bit to get to book 3, because book 3 is anybody that's read the Wheel of Time, they have their favorite. I really feel like book 3 is where the whole series takes off, and so
it's where it found its voice.
Don't get me wrong, all the books are good, but it's
I've only read the first one. I might join you. I might join you and try.
That's the thing. It's such a big ask, because like if you read the first 3 books, which is a lot to ask somebody, hey, just casually go read 75 hours worth of books. It's fine.
Yeah, if this was at Netflix, it'd be like, it gets really good after season 5.
Yeah, kind of like that. Um, but you'll be like, the story in book 3 is so good, and you'll be so vested in all of where all the characters are going that you won't help but force yourself to read the rest of them.
I remember that feeling, Josh. I used to get that feeling. Terry Brooks, author of the Sword of Shannara series, used to give me that feeling. And David Eddings also, two fantasy authors of my childhood. And I used to just be so invested in the characters, and I would read another book, and I would be sad when it was over. And I haven't felt that feeling in a long time. Maybe I'll give Robert Jordan a shot to bring back that feeling from my childhood.
I felt so bad. Like, the first time I finished The Wheel of Time, like, I almost cried because I felt like I had lost friends. And I know I've said that before, but like, it's a weird feeling for me because I don't like people, to feel like, no, I don't want these people to leave. Stay in my life. These fictional characters.
But the Wheel of Time turns again, and you can just read it over again.
Yeah, but I had a dream once. This is a very random discussion, but I know the story so well, and I know what turns that it takes. I had a dream that there was one key part of the story that changed, and it went off into its own different thing. And during the dream, my brain was just exploring this possible story that could have happened with the same premise and the same setup and the same characters. And I woke up in like almost a cold sweat because I just wanted to stay asleep so hard. Like, no, I want to go back and explore more of this random thing that my subconscious came up with.
More evidence that we're in the Matrix. You're like, no, just I just want to take the red pill. You can kill all my friends. Just plug me back in. Don't and let me forget about it.
Blue pill. That's the blue pill.
Pill.
Take the blue pill. You stay in Wonderland. Ooh, give me that blue pill. You have any extras just in case this one doesn't take?
Josh, you just gave our audience a thrill. I love that you correct me on things like that. Don't ever change. So yeah, you're having fun going through these reminiscent fantasy worlds of your past. Meanwhile, I'm reading The New Jim Crow: Mass Incarceration in the Age of Colorblindness by Michelle Alexander. I'm almost done. It's really long. It's challenging everything I know and think about the world. It's changing me. I'm still processing what I'm going to say about it. Also, in the meantime, because I couldn't just eat bran flakes straight for 2 weeks, I also knocked out one of the books on my list of books that friends wrote that I read. Okay. I don't recommend that one. I'm not even going to say the title of it. But
wow, your friend wrote it, asked you to read it as a favor, and you're not even going to name it. You don't, like, friend, like, you did good, but I hate this book so much, I'm not even going to mention the name in the fear that people buy it. That's pretty harsh.
Friend is a strong word. Okay, I got to tell the story. So there's a tradition in the military occasionally to kind of bond with people by getting out of the office. Usually you go patronize some off-base restaurant that's a popular dive in the middle of the day. And so we'd done that. We went to this old place in downtown Shreveport that was this old Italian restaurant that made muffaletta sandwiches. Have you ever had a muffaletta?
I have not.
It's like a round sandwich with pastrami, and it has olive jam smeared on the bread. Anyway, it was this Italian sandwich shop. And we got in there, and it's very Italian. It has old pictures of like the mayor from 60 years ago eating there, that kind of thing. And the guy that was working the counter in front of him was a stack of these books. And while he was selling us our sandwiches, he was also pitching his book. So it was broken up into little novellas, and it was this mob family story. And to get him to stop talking about it, I bought one, and he autographed it, and I read it, and it wasn't good. So it's on the shelf in the day room.
Okay, so you said like a friend recommended it. What you meant was that you got like glad-handed and like just to make somebody stop talking. Like somebody forced a pamphlet into your hands as you were walking past them on the street. Okay, those are very different scenarios. Yes.
The other two books I have are from friends, but this one wasn't, and it wasn't good, and I'm not, whatever, done with that.
Well, I mean, the guy had wrote the book, it had been published, it was available for sale, and he was still working the counter at the sandwich shop. I mean, all of that should have combined to be like, this probably isn't the best work of fiction.
I wanted to give it a chance. I'd never read anything in the, like, mafioso genre. So.
Was it just full of tropes and just...
No, it was interesting, but his pacing was weird. He started off on like a cotton plantation in the southern United States and ended up in New York City, and then he ended up in Sicily, and there was just these big narrative jumps, and I couldn't keep track of all the characters, and it wasn't compelling, and it just wasn't good.
Fair. Okay, dokie. And you're also not the best audience for fiction in the first place, so you were going to be a tough critic anyway.
I was giving it a chance. I thought I was giving it a chance. All right, Josh. This February will mark the 25th anniversary of the release of a movie that bombed in the box office and yet has had such tremendous cultural impact as we're talking about it 25 years later.
Now, hang on a second. I'm trying to be less combative, and you come out of the gate swinging with it bombed. It didn't bomb. It made $12.5 million on a $10 million budget. It technically paid for itself and then a little bit extra. It did not bomb, sir.
For all intents and purposes, that's a bomb. You know it.
As an accountant, they're in the black. That's all I can say. Okay,
but yeah. Who knows how fuzzy the math is? I don't know how they decide what number they say is their production budget. If they spent $10 million making a movie and they made $12.5 million in the box office, does that mean they made it back? Or is there $2.5 million worth of marketing costs that they hid and they actually didn't even break even?
No, I think $10 million was the total budget, including Jennifer Aniston's paycheck, which I'm sure was the highest in the whole movie.
If you haven't guessed, the movie is Office Space, directed by Mike Judge.
There you go.
So Office Space kind of flew below the radar, and I think there's a reason for that. I mean, 1999 was a huge year in movies. Oh my gosh. I was looking back at everything that came out in 1999. Star Wars, The Phantom Menace, The Sixth Sense, Toy Story 2, The Matrix, Tarzan, The Mummy.
I'm sitting here shaking my head at you.
Juggernauts.
Do you not remember episode 99? I talked. I rattled off a list of the best movies that came out in 1999.
Okay, good. So we've covered this. That was 10 episodes ago. But yes, 1999 was a huge... Did you even talk about Office Space in episode 99?
Yes, I did. I mentioned it.
No, you didn't.
Yes, it's on the list, man. I'm going in the show notes right now. You keep doing your thing. I'm going to prove you wrong.
Okay. So, huge year. One thing that there's two other movies I didn't list on that, which is American Beauty, which was a huge Oscar contender that year, and Fight Club. And something that Office Space, American Beauty, Fight Club, and The Matrix all have in common is that they start off with our protagonists suffering psychological unwellness in a cubicle-based office environment.
I am listening to what you're saying. I am going to engage you.
1999 was the year of the Cubicle movie.
I'm going to engage in that point after I make this point. It is on my list, sir. 1999 was good for movies. It is right below 10 Things I Hate About You and right above The Sixth Sense.
So keen listeners of the Bad at Magic podcast know that in episode 99, Josh made a list of all of the amazing movies that came out in 1999, one of which was Office Space. Now,
yes.
Office Space was released in February, which is the dump month of the film release calendar. It's after Oscar season, before the summer blockbuster season. Studios are just trying to find something to fill the gap.
This is one of the few movies where I went and did some research about the meta. Usually I'm very focused on just the story and the plot, but this one I wanted to read. Why was it a cult classic? Yeah. It's such a good movie.
Yeah, exactly. And why has it become a cult classic?
Well, I read a couple of quick facts that add up to make me think, oh, okay, that makes sense. And so one of them was the marketing for the movie was bad, and not for any lack of the movie. Well, here's the thing. They talk about they couldn't put Jennifer Aniston on any of the posters because she plays such a minor role in the movie.
So they feel like a bait and switch if you're like, so Friends had this huge run where it was the most popular show on television. This is right at the peak of Friends fame. So she was the big name A-list actor that they got for this movie.
Yes, but they couldn't put her on the post. They couldn't justify putting her on the posters because I honestly think the guy's neighbor who can hear him through the wall, I think he has more lines than Jennifer Aniston does in this movie.
Yeah.
That's one thing. The second thing was the humor of this movie is very satirical and it's very situation based and it's very you have to be in the rhythm of what's going on screen. The director even said, there is no joke we tell in this movie that you can extract for a 15-second trailer ad. You can't. There's movies that have slapstick jokes or one-liners or something that you can extract easily and put it into a preview trailer and hook an audience. But this one, the humor was too nuanced, is what he said. As the director, of course, he would say that. But it was too complex to really make a good trailer about it.
Well, we'll put a link to the trailer and the audience can decide. But I'm with you. I think that crew and the production company realized that the marketing for this, they didn't have a high enough budget to actually be able to figure out how to market this thing to people, which is, I think, a good recipe for a cult classic. Like, yeah, we don't know how to market it. We'll try, just like how they failed with Millennium Man and Robin Williams. It was actually a good movie, but they sold it as a Robin Williams comedy, and it wasn't, and it flopped at the box office. Okay,
well, so I'm actually going to draw a parallel real quick. I keep interrupting you, but this is a good one. Whenever you see a movie trailer, and the trailer consists of a voiceover showing clips of the movie, rather than just playing clips of the movie and letting them stand on their own, that is the first and primary indicator that the marketing department doesn't know what to do with this movie.
Ooh, I like it. That's a hot take. Peter is dissatisfied with his job, and then they show him behind the wheel of his brown Toyota Corolla inching forward while he's getting passed by a guy on a walker.
Yes, exactly. There was no voice in the movie that quickly sums up what the movie is about. So they had to create a narrator that doesn't exist, which feels cheap almost when you watch the trailer.
Okay, so pretend I'm sitting in a conference room at the marketing department that's been hired to market this movie, and sell me what you think the tagline for this movie should be. On the movie poster they picked, it said, quote, "Work sucks." That's what it says on all the Office Space movie posters. What would you say?
So I think that's the best they could have gone with, because it's the shortest. You have to come up with something that's catchy and memorable that is not too many words. And so in my mind, if I was pitching this for marketing, I would start with the premise: some days, don't you just want to burn your office to the ground? And I would try to shorten that as much as possible.
Okay,
right?
Good. Here's one I thought that was in the movie that would make a good one. Maybe you show a picture of a guy in a cubicle with like his tie kind of sagging and like
Ooh.
boring, inane stuff happening around him, and him looking directly at the camera, and it says something like, "Every day was the worst day of Peter's life."
You know what? I like that a lot. Here's my take on that. You just inspired me. The movie poster should be the opposite. It should be looking at the back of Peter's head as he's looking at his computer. But it should be the scene where he's got Cheetos just poured all over his counter. Tetris is on the monitor,
Tetris.
and the wall of the cubicle is on the floor with all his papers scattered everywhere.
Okay, yeah. So what the marketing department went with was a man covered from head to toe in yellow Post-it notes with inane office-y things written on them. Where on earth did they even get that? It's terrible.
I don't even think there's a single Post-it note in that movie.
I don't think so either. So work sucks, guy covered in Post-it notes. You're already off to a bad start. If you were going to try to give an elevator speech on this movie, how would you describe it?
I would describe it as, have you ever had a really boring job and then wanted to come in and just not care about anything? That's what this movie is about. The guy shows up and just doesn't care.
Nice. I think people. So if you sell it as a fantasy, like what would it be like if you just showed up and didn't care? Yeah, I don't know if they were worried about spoiling the movie, but it's not a big spoiler.
That happens in like the first 10 minutes of the film.
Yeah, even the title's not great. Office Space, like it doesn't connect to anything. I tried coming up with a better title. First World Problems. I don't think that had even been coined yet. The Rat Race. I don't know.
So what we're getting at, listeners, if you haven't figured it out by now, is that Ben and I both really like this movie. I'm part of the cult classic that follows the stupid thing, but we feel like it suffered from poor movie management. Like the people that were in the movie, the people that directed and wrote it, they cared a lot. It was the corporate bureaucracy surrounding that or adjacent to that is supposed to get it out into the world. They failed at their job.
Yeah. So luckily, in the mechanisms of 25 years ago, after this thing kind of flopped at the box office, it had this massive word-of-mouth campaign, and it made more money being sold on DVD than it did in the box office.
I hope enough of that went back to the writers, because this movie is so genius in its off-brand comedy that it does, because so many comedy movies just want to slap you in the face with the punchlines, and this one is so much more subtle to that. There's no point in this movie where you could insert a laugh track and it wouldn't feel jarring, because that's not the kind of humor that they're going for. It's a humor of commiseration. It's a humor of, yep, I have been in this situation with this protagonist. I know exactly what he's feeling like.
So Mike Judge kind of cut his teeth as a cartoonist. He's famous for Beavis and Butthead. and King of the Hill. This was his first try at a live-action movie, and I saw some people kind of describe these characters in this movie as cartoon characters, but it works.
Are they cartoon characters? I mean, they have, the characters are kind of flat, I guess, if we really want to think about it.
There's some jokes, like one of his best friends' name is Michael Bolton, and it's this running joke that it was kind of at the peak of Michael Bolton's popularity, but he wasn't this universally popular celebrity, and so the character chafes at the comparisons. Every time he has to say his name, someone goes, "Oh, like the singer? Do you know him? Are you related?" And he has to go, "No."
Yeah. So again, that goes back to like these. So everybody but the protagonist is kind of two-dimensional that way. In that, like, Michael Bolton's entire character is defined by he likes hip-hop instead of pop music. His name is Michael Bolton. He refuses to change it because why should I change my name? He's the one with no talent. And then people constantly like, oh, are you related to the singer? And that's like his whole character arc right there.
Yeah. Okay, so how many protagonists would you say there are in this film?
Ooh, one. There is one protagonist in this film. No. Okay. No.
I'm going to make a case for a second.
No. I immediately retracted. There are two protagonists in this movie. Yes. Can I do my plot synopsis real quick in case people haven't seen Office Space?
So there's 3 acts. Go ahead.
There's 3 acts. Okay, the first act is very short. It's at the beginning of the film, and we establish the character hates his job and his work life sucks. He's a software engineer.
They want you to relate to this if you have a cubicle job.
If you've ever worked in any kind of large bureaucratic office, I mean, this rings and resonates. It is so true to life, how it just feels. My favorite detail of this whole movie is every moment that he is in the office in the first act, there is not a single note of music that is played. It's just the inane, like, office background noises that you hear, and it's just so dead. And it's just like, it just crushes your whole emotional. Anyway, he hates his job. It's boring. It sucks. It's a typical office job. And he feels trapped and he can't escape from it. He's just got this kind of mediocre life that he's just coasting through. And he feels like there should be something more. Then
because he achieved the American dream. He got his college degree. He got his office job. He's on the path. And he succeeded, but he doesn't feel successful.
He's unfulfilled is what it is. And I think everybody on this planet has had to reconcile the difference between what your life is and what you expected it to be when you were 9, and you had to come to terms with that. And he is coming to terms with that as he's going through the movie. And he goes to a hypnotherapist, like, early in the first act.
But that's not the reason he goes to the hypnotherapist.
That's not the reason he goes. The reason he goes...
This was an underdeveloped plot thread.
He goes because his girlfriend says that you should go see this hypnotherapist. He could help you. He really helped me. Oh yeah, he really helped Anne with her eating, with her weight. And his friends look at me like, Anne's anorexic. He goes, yeah, he's really good. So his girlfriend, who he's only with, it seems like, because that's what you do. You have a girlfriend and you just stay with the girlfriend. Constant running gag that, like, he says, I feel like she's cheating on me, and everybody around him just kind of laughs like, yeah, I get that feeling too. Like, it's obvious that she's cheating on him and he's the only one that doesn't know.
Okay, anyway. I'm glad you got this because I didn't. I was always like, what are they talking? It felt like there was a scene that they filmed for the movie that didn't make the final cut, establishing her character a little better and maybe giving some background to that where she actually confesses. Oh, she does. She does confess to cheating on, but cheating. Ben, you sheltered dove of a person. Because you're LDS. Okay, go ahead. Explain it. Just completely mansplain it to me.
This is a thing that happens. People cheat on each other, and typically it's the person that they're quote unquote with that's either the last to know or the last to acknowledge it. Because either it's being hidden from them, that specific person, very well, and not from everyone else, or that person is willfully blind to the fact that their partner is being unfaithful to them because they just want to make the relationship work.
So what's the social contract here? Why was there 5 characters that all kind of did that thing where, like, yeah, she might be cheating on you, and then kind of cut it off?
Well, they laugh like, yeah, I get that feeling too. And then he challenges them on it, like, what are you talking about? And the idea is that you don't, like, if he doesn't know, it's his choice at this point. Like, there's a point where if you find out, then, yeah, you give your friend a heads up, like, hey, dude, like, this happened, like, you need to deal with this. It is clear that Peter is repressing the idea that she's cheating on him, and he just randomly throw it into conversations, but he really doesn't want to know it. And so all of his friends just kind of like take it as what it is. Like, yeah, she's totally cheating on you, but they don't want to be the one to shatter the illusion that he's built around himself about it.
Okay, sorry, I derailed you. So the first act is establishing his thankless life and unfulfilling relationship, and then the precipitating event is this visit to the hypnotherapist that kicks off the second act.
Yes. And so he tells the hypnotherapist, like, can you just make me like come home from work and make me think that I was fishing all day? Like, I love that line so much. Like, that's not really what I do. And so he hypnotizes Peter and he tells him to take
There's another line here that I love. He's like, every single day is worse than the day before it. Like, today is the worst day of my life. And the therapist looks him right in the eye and goes, wow, that's messed up.
Every day you meet me, that's the worst day of my life. Is today the worst day of your life? Yes, it is. Like, wow, that's messed up. Yeah. Oh, Peter. No, that's the hypnotherapist. And then he has to apologize. Oh, sorry about that. No,
that actor looks so familiar. I had to go look it up. He's the guy that played Friar Tuck from Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves.
Oh, that's one of your favorite movies. It makes sense that you would recognize it. So
anyway.
He's kind of a heavy-set guy, and he starts hypnotizing Peter into taking all the worries and cares and inhibitions that he has and just crushing them way, way down. Just way, way down. And then he has a heart attack in the middle of this whole hypnotherapy that's happening.
Plot device, MacGuffin.
It's a complete MacGuffin, a complete plot device. I agree, but the idea is that he hypnotizes Peter's like, until you will feel this way until I snap my fingers. And he hypnotizes him and then dies, so he never gets to snap his fingers. And Peter is just in this I don't care about anything or anyone, no inhibitions mode.
Enter second act.
Enter the second act, where Peter does all of the things that you have ever fantasized about doing. Like, he shows up to work and first of all, he was supposed to go to work on Saturday and didn't. Turned off his alarm, stayed in bed literally
ignored his
all day.
answering machine.
He had 13 messages from his boss that he skipped through. His girlfriend called him, and his girlfriend even said, why didn't you go to work today? Apparently they called her. He goes, I didn't feel like it. And then she starts yelling at him, like, you can't do that. I can't believe you, and she's just going off on him. And I love that he just takes the phone, a cordless phone, by the way. For listeners who don't know what I'm talking about, it's a house phone. Like, it was attached to your house, not your pocket. Never mind. He takes the cordless phone away from his head. He stares right at it, and with his opposite hand, he comes up with a finger and deliberately pushes the hang up button and sets it back down and gets back into bed. And again, the detail I love so much is she immediately calls back. It goes to the voice to the answering machine, which is a machine on your counter that actually kept your voicemails before voicemail was a thing. And so he could hear her leaving the message, and she said, oh, by the way, and screams, I've been cheating on you, so loud that the answering machine vibrated. And I just love that detail of the movie.
Let's do a nested batted technology segment later, so don't get distracted by the technology as you're
got it. Yes, because this is late 90s technology. There's going to be a lot more of it. Okay, and so then the second act is just Peter doing all the things that you want him to do. He shows up to work in flip-flops and like a t-shirt, and there's a door that always shocks him with the static electricity, and so he just gets a power drill and takes the doorknob off it. He's just not going to deal with it ever again. He goes to his cubicle, and he's like, I want to see the window. So he takes the wall and just knocks it over. He doesn't clean anything up. He just knocks it over, and everything's everywhere, and he can see outside again. He's playing Tetris. The company is going through downsizing, or like they're doing efficient processes, and so they have consultants that are interviewing everybody, like, what is your job? We're going to rebuild the processes and kind of streamline, get rid of some people. And he rolls in there, and this is the quintessential scene. This is where you fall in love with Peter for forever. Because he sits down with these two guys who are going to fire him. And he tells them the truth. They start asking him questions about his job and where he works.
Instead of following the script of when a consultant comes in and starts interviewing you about your job and you say the things that you think are what they want to hear to protect your existence, he just gives it to him straight.
Oh, man, he lays it out. And we'll deep dive into this scene later because I have so many notes about that scene. But anyway, he comes, like, he tells the truth, and the exact opposite of what we think is going to happen happens. And they want to give him a promotion because, like, that's just a young man with upper management written all over him. He's a straight shooter,
upper management written all over him.
And he's going through all of this. All right, so this is the second act. He's going through, and he doesn't care about anything. He does all the things you want him to do. Then,
but before the second act is over, one of his friends is like, "Peter, what's going on with you?" And he's like, "I just stopped caring, and now I feel fine. This is the best day of my life." So, in one hypnotherapy session, he's gone from every day is the worst day of my life to this is the best day of my life.
All right, so then we get to the third act, and this is where the trigger of the third act is Peter finds out that his two best friends at the place, Samir and Michael, they're going to get fired. And this is the moment where he starts caring again. Like, it starts to ramp up as the rest of the film goes on, but this is the moment where him caring about stuff starts to come back. You're about
to get promoted, your friends are going to get fired. Are you just going to sit there and let it happen?
He didn't care about anything that was going to happen to him, but the instant that he found out something bad was going to happen to his friends, all of his care started to come back.
Yeah, snapped him out of it.
I love that little detail. And this is where we enter the third act, where then he tells his friends, like, hey, you guys are going to get fired. And they come up with this harebrained scheme because they do software engineering for banks. They're going to do the Superman 3. I could have sworn it was Superman 2, but whatever.
It was Superman 3.
Okay. We're going to put a virus into the machine that anytime it calculates interest, is going to round off like fractions of a cent and dump it into an account for us. And we're just going to steal all this money from all of these banks. And they're both getting fired. And so Peter convinces them, you're both getting fired. You have nothing to lose. Let's just do it. Let's go out on a high note. And then they both they agree. Okay, we're going to do it. They do it on a Friday. They get fired. They have the weekend. They go to like a party and they're doing their inane things, and they check the balance on Monday just to see if it's working. And the balance they were expecting was, a handful of cents, and it ended up being $300,000 and some change.
Yeah.
And so then proceed to freak the crap out for the next 10 minutes of the movie, and them trying to figure out what to do. Eventually they decide that they're all sad, like, oh, we're all going to go to jail. And Peter decides, you know what? No, this was my fault. He gets all of it given. It closes the account, gets all the money in traveler's checks, writes a note explaining everything that happened, and slides it under his boss's door after hours, and then leaves, taking all the blame onto himself. And then he shows up the next day to find out, to get arrested and get fired and all of those things, only to find that the building has been burned to the ground by a tertiary character that we have been seeing on and off throughout the movie, and how he's just been horribly abused the entire time by this organization, and he finally snapped and he burned the whole building to the ground.
And importantly, picked up the traveler's checks before he burned the building down, so he got the money.
Yes, because the closing scene of the movie is this weird character on a beach in Mexico somewhere complaining that he ordered a Mai Tai and he got a mojito.
Okay. So it starts off with the intro that's the soul-sucking commute, and then the first act, which is bad office environment. Second act is Peter not caring. Third act is the virus and the recompense, and then the epilogue is the scene on the beach and Peter working construction and being more satisfied with his life. Why has this resonated so much that 25 years later, a movie that barely no one saw in theaters, we're still talking about it?
Because this is the movie that did what Peter did in that interview. This is the movie that it showed an office environment, and it didn't do the movie thing where it made it look fancy or like the things that were happening there were high stakes. It showed what an office environment is really like. It's boring, it's inane, and you can get by most days putting in 30% effort because that's all that's required of you from the bureaucracy.
Yeah, it's the success you're supposed to want, but when you have it, you're not happy with it.
Yeah, that's
what Samir and Michael were saying to him is like, hey man, his girlfriend too, like, go to work, like, you did it, you made it, you got the job. There's another character, which is the old guy that as soon as the consultants show up is panicking because he knows his job is pointless and he's going to get fired, and he's like, I've been doing this for my whole life. I've been doing this thing that I'm supposed to do, and it's thankless and it's terrible and it's soul sucking and I hate it, but I don't want to lose it.
This is the fight that everybody, I think, experiences in their mid-20s in America. Because when you're growing up in America, you are told as a kid in school, you can be anything, you can do anything. And then all the popular media and the movies and the TV shows and the news articles, everything that you see is about these great achieving people doing amazing world-bending things. And then somehow in your 20s, it went from I'm going to be an astronaut to I am now working this entry to mid-level job at this corporate bureaucracy. How did this happen? I was destined for great things. The promises that society made to me were not fulfilled. And everyone has to reconcile that sometime in their 20s.
Did you happen to pause it and look at the Initech logo outside their headquarters?
the little piece of modern art that they had sitting out there?
Yeah, it's a picture of a square peg going into a round hole.
That's an amazing detail that I did not pick up on. I remember looking at it, but it's just immediately dismissing it as, oh, that's corporate nonsensical art that they do.
There's lots. The movie really rewards that kind of attention to detail. So let's take it apart a little bit. I want to go back to the first act because the first act is my favorite. It's the part you can relate to. It's what established it. The rest of it's a bit of a fantasy. But up to that point, you can just relate to it. Now, you completely skipped over it. Who's your second protagonist, by the way?
Oh, you're right. The second protagonist is Jennifer Aniston's character, the waitress. Joanna. She's the waitress that works at, it's not Flingers. Tchotchkes, that's what it was. She's a waitress there, and she's doing what Peter does. She's just going to her job, and she's just trying to put in the effort that they require and expect of her. And like the little back and forth dilemma that you see there is that there's two interactions she has with her boss. She explains to Peter at one point that like, oh yeah, these buttons, I'm required to wear at least 15 pieces of flair that they call it. And I just grab these out of a bin because I don't care. I just need to wear 15 of them. But her boss comes over to her twice and is like, okay, so you see Brian over there. Brian's wearing 37 pieces of flair and I'm only counting 15 on yours. And she goes, yeah, the 15's the minimum, right? I have enough. And she's like, yeah, but like, you should really be wearing more. But he doesn't tell her to wear more. And this is one of the things that I wrote down in my notes. Like, this is so corporate America. It's so...
Yeah, people can relate to this.
It's so non-confrontational. It drives me absolutely insane. And that's what she was trying to get at. Like, do you want me to wear more flair? And like, his response was, I want you to want to wear more flair.
Right.
And... so is the answer yes or no? Because this is how much flair that I am wearing. So clearly I am communicating to you, this is what I am going to do. This is what I want to do.
So her boss in this upscale casual restaurant is kind of this corporate cipher representing the idea that management isn't just after your body, they want your heart. Like, they don't just want her to do the thing, they want her to believe in their ethic.
Well, and that ties way too close to what's going on in America right now, is because the corporate structure still like believes that, like the high levels, like people should care and have loyalty, and the people at the bottom are like, you don't pay us to be loyal. You pay us barely what we're worth. So why should we do anything above and beyond what you're asking us to do? Which is like this whole flair thing. Interesting.
But for every Joanna, there's the Brian or the other guy who's like was doing exactly what they wanted, exceeding and being over the top.
Interesting side note, there was a restaurant that used to, like, their uniforms looked almost exactly what the waitress and waiters had to wear at TGI Fridays. And people would go to TGI Fridays after this movie came out and ask so incessantly about the flair that they had to wear that corporate had to change the policy to remove all flair because customers were so dialed into the flair that all the people were wearing that it was actually detracting from the business model.
Okay, so let's talk about this for a minute. Okay, so Joanna's character had this thankless... They decided they wanted to have two kinds of thankless, low-end jobs. You got your office worker at this software production company, and then you have this waitress at a upscale casual restaurant. And they both were just kind of not happy with the existence that this was leading to, and you get to see both of their characters go through a bit of a progression together. I think maybe as Joanna saw Peter going through his transformation, it gave her the courage to eventually confront her boss and quit her job and get another one that she was happy with.
I think Peter really impacted her this way because he had always had an attraction to this waitress. They established in the movie that, like, oh, you should just ask her out. Like, no, I'm with Anne or whatever, and that doesn't matter. But when he did ask her out, he did it in the most perfect, nonchalant, like, there's no words for it. He was just so confident. Like, oh, what are you doing for lunch today? And she was admittedly not a great waitress. She's like, oh, we're doing the blackened, it's just written on the board right there. Just look at that. And then wandered off, like not wanting to deal with him at all. As
right.
a quote unquote good waitress would know what the specials were that day and be able to rattle them off without having to look at the board. But then, like, he does the most, like, it's just so confident. I love that scene so much. He just walked right around the hostess, like he's breaking all of the rules of the restaurant, like just walking right in, goes right back to the
he's
employee
still
area.
Right in the grips of the hypnosis.
Yes. And he just like he walks where the employees walk, like where the refills are. You're not supposed to go back there. He didn't wait to be seated. He walked right up to her and started addressing her. I was like, I meant, what are you doing for lunch today? I would like to have lunch with you. She's like, oh, I don't think I can. And he goes, and then without missing a beat, he goes, okay, tell you what, I'm going to go next door and I'm going to get a table. If you want to join me, that'd be great. And then starts walking off. And it was just Like you could see like her character was just entranced by this energy that he was putting out.
So she shows up with kind of this bewildered look on her face. It like, okay, you've intrigued me. You hooked me. I'm here. What do you got? And then they have this conversation. Her character, I think, is a good early instance of a trope that's since been named. I don't know if we've talked about it on the podcast. Maybe we have, called Manic Pixie Dream Girl.
I think you've mentioned it. I don't think we've like discussed it in depth.
Yeah, it's just this idea that there's this feminine character. It's a little bit of a cipher that she's just too perfect. Like, Jennifer Aniston was at the peak of her Friends popularity. She's absolutely radiant in this movie. She just steals the camera in any scene she's in, and she but she comes in and sits. She takes him up on his casual invitation for a lunch date, and then she's just intrigued, and he tells her what he's up to, and she's like, okay, I'm in. And he's like, do you want to come back to my place tonight and watch Kung Fu? And she's like, heck yeah, I love Kung Fu. Like, classic Manic Pixie Dream Girl.
Hang on. I take issue with the fact you say she steals every scene that she's in. Like, just because you aren't attracted to Peter doesn't mean you get to say Jennifer Aniston steals the show. Peter is a very objectively handsome man, and like, I think they played well together.
All right. I don't see how you, as a mid-90s anybody, you can't be conscious of the fact that Jennifer Aniston is the only real star in this movie. The whole production, in fact, a lot of the reading I did about it was them talking about the fact that they could only afford to have her there for 2 weeks. She filmed all of her scenes in 2 weeks, and they had to get over the fact that everybody was a bit starstruck when she showed up to film her scenes.
That makes sense. I feel like 2 weeks is a long time to film the scenes that she was in, which was not many.
I wonder how much. I mean, it was in the restaurant. It was driving. It was outside at the burning building. I mean, it was a lot.
She was not outside the burning building. They mentioned her, but she never showed up to that scene.
Oh, okay.
Wow,
she was inserted her there.
She was in his apartment a couple of times. She was in one of 2 restaurants, which they easily could have repropped. So it was one restaurant, and then they were in the car and at the barbecue. There's only 4 locations I can think of that she was in. Like, easy, knock that out in 2 weeks.
Yeah. All right. So we've got this second plot thread of her, our second protagonist. And I think it's good. It adds to it.
Well, let's close the loop on that one. Finally, after the second time her manager comes there and says, like, I'm only counting 15 pieces of flair, she loses it and completely goes off on this guy and, like, just flipping him off, flipping up all the customers and yelling at the top of her lungs, like, just making a scene.
She didn't yell, though.
Yeah, she was louder than the polite.
She was just irate.
She was louder than the polite conversational tone that you're supposed to use at a restaurant. So everybody took notice. And what's also funny is at the end of the movie, we find that she's now, instead of working at Tchotchkes, she's working next door at Flingers. Like, doing the same job, just at a different place. Yeah. Same thing happened to Michael and Samir. They went to this other company they kept talking about that was their biggest competitor. Like, it was Initech and Penetrode or something. And like, they just started working at the other software development place. Yeah. So we have our antagonist that nothing really changed. Like, is she really an antagonist just because she quit a job because her manager was being, like, indirect with her?
Let's take a tangent here. You mentioned the fact that the way they depicted this corporate culture of this upscale casual restaurant, Tchotchkes, impacted the actual operations of a real-world restaurant chain. Like, that's the cultural impact of this. What are some other impacts you can think of that this movie had on society?
So, Swingline never had a line of red staplers. They actually had to paint a stapler red to be the MacGuffin for this minor side plot in the movie. After the movie came out, Swingline immediately created a line of red Swingline staplers, and they sold like hotcakes.
Yes. I read one step further than that, and that was in the production of the movie, they approached Swingline and asked them if they'd like to do a sponsorship, and Swingline declined, and then they went ahead and painted a stapler red and did it anyway. I actually, so they got free marketing out of it.
I looked for that specific thing for like 30 seconds because I was like, how much did Swingline pay to have their, because he even says, Milton the character says like, oh, they switched from the Swingline to the Boston staplers, but I kept my Swingline because it doesn't jam as much. I'm like, how much did Swingline pay for that line, I wonder? But I couldn't find anything. Turns out they didn't pay anything.
Yeah. So after the first version, the movie poster with the guy covered in Post-it notes wasn't doing it, they released a slightly modified version that had the same guy, but with Milton poking his head out from behind him. I want to ask you about Milton. Does that character resonate with you?
Milton, the weird guy at the office that just kind of mumbles
with the
a lot.
Coke bottle bottom glasses and just continually disrespected and eventually not even paid, and is the guy that burns the building down.
I love that. Oh yeah, we found out that he was actually laid off 5 years ago and nobody told him about it. And because of a glitch in payroll, he just kept getting a paycheck. Oh, so we're going to fire him? No. We just fixed the glitch so he won't be receiving a paycheck anymore. Oh, so we're going to fire him. Well, no. He just won't be getting a paycheck and we'll let that work itself out. And then this escalating you have to talk to payroll about that. I did. They said I have to talk to you. And just ask mom, ask dad nonsense. Again, non-confrontational corporate structure. I'll talk about that at some point. But Milton as a character, I honestly think he was a bit of a direct comic relief in the movie. Because a person like that feels almost unemployable. Like, what job would you give somebody? Like, who sat down in a room and interviewed this person and saw his interpersonal skills and said, you would be a great fit for this company?
Yeah, I mean, maybe a mailroom clerk or something like that. But I don't find that character funny. Like, I never laughed at any scene he was in. Like, I get that. Here's my hot take on Office Space. I think Mike Judge made this comic that led to the creation of Office Space, and the main character that was the genesis for Office Space was Milton's character, and it was what led this thing off. And I think the characters of Peter and Joanna are much more interesting, nuanced, and creative, and have so much more narrative interest. And Milton's character should have been eliminated in the production of this thing, in my opinion.
You don't think Milton served any purpose?
No.
Well, Milton,
I didn't find him interesting or funny.
So here's the reason that they had Milton, and the reason they needed to have Milton is because he is the deus ex machina in the third act that burns the building down and gets Peter out of going to jail forever. Because we have to have a happy ending. Even Mike Judge admits it's kind of a weak ending. Well, we have to have a happy ending for our protagonists, and in order to make this deus ex machina seem somewhat justified, we need to have this weird introverted guy that everybody continually takes increasing advantage of throughout the film. So that way it's justified, and when he does burn the building down, you go, I would have burned the building down too. Yeah. Oh, they turned my office into a storage space. They then moved me down to the storage space. Hey, while you're down here, can you go ahead and spray for cockroaches? Oh, and I haven't been paid in 3 weeks, and nobody is telling me why. Yeah, I'd have burned the building down too. Yeah. Okay. Didn't love Milton, but I guess you're right. It was kind of necessary from a narrative point of view. Okay, you wanted to come back to the arrival of the consultants. Let's talk about that, because we haven't talked about John McGinley yet. Yes, John McGinley is wonderful in everything that he is in, and he does not get enough acting jobs. Well, okay, so Peter's talking to Michael, and Michael or Peter, I can't remember which one of them, says, can you imagine us still doing this when we're 50? Like, yeah, it doesn't seem great, so something needs to change. And then arrive the consultants. The consultants come in, and then there's another character that explains, they say that they're efficiency, but really what you're doing is interviewing for your own job. They all know what's happening. Like, corporate is trying to be sly about it, but everybody knows everything that's going on always in an office forever, because the rumor mill and the gossip is the only thing that sustains you from minute to minute when you're working in thankless jobs like this. So Lumberg, the vice president of the place, obviously had to coordinate all of this through his secretary. The secretary, I guarantee, told everybody under the sun that she could, and then it just spread from there until everybody knew everything that was going on. This is why you're always nice to secretaries. They know everything. They have all the skeletons in the closet, and they probably put some of them there in the first place. Corporate accounts payable. Nina speaking. Just a moment. That happens, man. Like, if you work in an office and you're anywhere near the receptionist, you're going to hear the same phrase 1,000 times a day, and it can wear on you. And then Milton was in the cubicle, like, catty corner from Peter, and he was listening to, like, NPR or something, just loud enough for Peter to be able to hear it. And he poked his head up like, hey, Milton, can you turn it down just a little bit? And Milton gave a completely reasonable answer in a corporate bureaucracy. Well, if Jan gets to listen to her headphones while she's filing, then I should get to listen to the radio at a reasonable volume while I'm collating. And, like, gives this whole spiel about how he had it approved by the upper management. And, like, he just wants to listen to his radio. Everybody's the star of their own life, and Peter doesn't care about any of that. It's great. It's this perfect accident where everything that's wrong is all justifiable in isolation. If you look at every individual piece, you understand why. But when you combine it all together and you take away the doors and walls of a traditional
pre that era office, and you're just confined to this little cubicle and you can't see out the window, and there's all the noise and all of the indignities, especially all of the managers coming and telling him that he'd done his work wrong.
So we're using a new cover sheet on the TPS reports. Did you get the memo? Yep, I got the memo right here. I just forgot this time. I'll fix it. Okay, great. And like, this is the thing though. It's clear, like, because you and I have been on the other side of this.
Yes.
All the managers, all the way up to leadership, had a staff meeting, and one of the only things that went wrong was somebody mentioned, oh, this guy gave the wrong cover sheet on his TPS reports. And so everybody in that guy's chain of command has to take responsibility for that. And rather than deal with their subordinates, they went directly to the problem, each and every one of them. And so he was telling the Bobs about how, yeah, like if I make a mistake,
8 bosses.
I have 8 bosses right now. And if I make a mistake, I'm going to get hassled by 8 different people. And that's one of the things. That's one of the things he said that's perfect is, you know, like, so that's my only real motivation is not to get hassled. But you know what, Bob? That'll only make someone work just hard enough not to get fired.
Yeah. Perfect. That's exactly what I wanted to point out. That, like, in that culture, he didn't have any stake. Do you want to do the dialogue? How about, do you want to be Peter or do you want to be the Bobs?
I don't have it written down. I
have the script in our notes. Isn't it right there?
I'm not scrolling down. I'm going to see if I can do it from memory.
Okay. Which you want to be, Peter or the Bobs?
I'll be the Bobs.
Okay. The thing is, Bob, it's not that I'm lazy. It's that I just don't care.
What? Don't care?
It's a problem of motivation, all right? Now, if I work my off and Initech ships a few extra units, I don't see another dime. So where's the motivation? And here's something else, Bob. I have 8 different bosses right now.
Excuse me?
8 bosses.
8?
8, Bob. So that means when I make a mistake, I have 8 different people coming by to tell me about it. That's my only real motivation, is not to be hassled and the fear of losing my job. But you know, Bob, that will only make someone work just hard enough to not get fired.
So let me float something to you here, and believe me, this is a hypothetical. But what if you were involved in some kind of like stock equity, a portion of the firm? Would that do anything for you?
I didn't go that far. I forget what he says next.
He goes, I don't know, Bob, maybe, I guess. And then he gets up and they leave the office. But like, yeah, that's a classic scene because it starts out with the Bobs on one side of the table being like, we are the authority. You need to justify to us your existence. And it does like a transition where it's clear Peter's been narrating and discussing everything that goes on in his job. And the roles have completely reversed, and the Bobs are just entranced by everything that he's saying.
They're eating out of his hand.
Because he's given the real story. Like, this is the stuff that they were there to discover and dig and try to find.
And they never hear in these kinds of interviews.
Yeah, and this is why the Bobs liked him so much, is because he provided such incredibly valuable insight to the actual inner workings of this organization. He made their job so easy. Like, it was... their
only mistake was in deciding to promote him.
From their perspective, this is the exact kind of employee you want because, like, he understands. They think he understands the inner workings of the structure so well that he can't help but be part of the upper management. Like, he would be such an asset on this side of the table with us to try to motivate employees to produce more. I can totally see exactly where the Bobs were coming from.
Yeah, and you can see them going back to the standard consultant toolbox. All right, well, we're going to identify the dead weight. We're going to cut some people in with some of the savings. We'll create some kind of incentive program, and we get paid, and the business gets to improve their metrics, and we move on to the next company.
All right, so there's another character I want to talk about. I have another hot take for this, okay?
Okay.
Bill Lumberg, who is the VP he's like the big boss of the building that Peter works in. And we see him throughout the thing. He's got the Porsche and he's always drinking his coffee mugs, his suspenders. Here's my hot take, Ben. Bill Lumberg is actually a pretty good manager.
Yeah, I think so too. In all the scenes, you have him just kind of eking more performance out of the people, and he never gets angry or agitated or change. He's just executing the script.
That's exactly what I was going to bring up. Is one, he knew every employee by name. Like, he walked up to somebody and knew exactly who they were. 2, every interaction that he has with people is always very calm, very controlled, and he is in full control of the conversation that is happening, even if it's unpleasant news that he's delivering to the person. In
that smarmy style that's the basis for the meme. I'm going to need to have you come in on Saturday.
So that is the only negative that I have on my list, is that he has just a tremendously bad verbal style. And like he has so many verbal pauses, he makes it actively annoying to talk to, which he might have used in his favor to become into the position that he was in. Who knows? But if you look at all of the things and the interactions that happened in that movie, with the exception of not telling Milton that we're not paying you anymore, and ducking that question every time it's brought up to him, he is the only person that is as direct as anyone can be in that setting. Like anytime Peter messes up, he walked right up to him like, "Oh, hey, Peter, how's it going?" And then Peter was doing the thing where he didn't care. And like Bill was like, "Hey, we need to address this." And he saw Peter come, he's like, "Oh, hey, Peter, what's going on?" And he turns and he squares up, and it's clear that he wants to have a conversation with him.
And Peter steps around him.
And Peter steps around him, which is fantastic, and everything that you always want to do. And he doesn't he turns around and he just watches him. And he watches him walk away. He doesn't stop him. Because in the military, if your boss says, "Hey, let me talk to you for a second," and you step around him, boy, you just made your day a whole lot worse.
It's going to escalate
very, very quickly. But that doesn't happen in the civilian world. But this guy squared up and an impromptu, I'm going to confront this employee on their poor behavior ad hoc right now. And just because Peter stepped around him, which is what we wanted him to do, doesn't take away from the fact that Bill was ready and willing to have that interaction right there.
Okay. Wow. Yeah, that is a hot take. The guy that has become synonymous with being a bad boss is actually a good boss.
From a corporate perspective, that guy was on point. Yeah.
So the memes. This movie is 25 years old, and yet it's become this source of endless memes. I was looking up memes on it. I'll put a photo montage in the Facebook notes, but I found one of almost every character. Almost every character has a meme of them out there in common, regular use.
Yeah. Like you said, Bill Lumbergh, that picture of him leaning on a cubicle with his coffee mug is synonymous with just my manager's going to tell me something I don't want to hear.
Yeah. And then, of course, there's the TPS reports meme, which is just becomes synonymous with the idea of inane, non-value added queep that your job levies on you.
So secret. I go out of my way. If I have to create an inane form in any organization that I'm in, I do my damnedest to backwards anagram that thing into a TPS report.
Awesome. Oh, I love it. That's great. One interesting curiosity of societal impact of this is that the actor, I want to find his name, that plays Michael Bolton, improvised the line when he was talking about the Michael Bolton. At one point, they asked him, and I'm just going to say what he says. They're like, "Oh, Michael Bolton, the singer?" He says, "Yeah, that no talent clown." and that phrase so in 2018 that phrase was added to the dictionary, and that movie was credited as being the first use of that term. So
just the butt clown part.
Yes. So as far as society is concerned, Office Space, that actor that David Herman that improvised that line for Michael Bolton was the first use of that term, and it's become in wide use now.
That is outstanding. I love that this movie canonically added to the English language.
Yes, and if you would like, I've got a link in the show notes to a beautiful Funny or Die sketch from the mid-2000s where they got the singer Michael Bolton to reenact every scene in the movie where the character Michael Bolton talks about the singer, and they splice it in the movie, and it is comedy gold.
That's excellent. I would like to see this, yes. Can we do the bad at technology portion of this movie?
Yes. Okay, so let's talk bad at technology. So you're going back to 1999. You got all the technology of 1999. Go ahead.
Oh, the nostalgia. First of all, yeah, just the cordless phone. I remember, cordless phone with an attached separate machine that was the answering machine. That just doesn't exist anymore. We've talked about that on this podcast. The term hanging up now no longer has any meaning.
Instead of having a phone that connects to a cellular tower, you have a phone with an antenna on it that connects to a receiving station in your house somewhere.
Yeah, that's plugged into the wall.
Okay, so there was that. There was an answering machine. There was a lot of technology scenes where it was dependent on seeing what was happening on the computer. Like there was one where he's trying to avoid his boss at the end of the day, and he was trying to save all his work before he left. And there was this thing where there was a progress bar that wasn't, because it kept resetting and giving him progress on something else.
Yes. It was like, saving data, and like the progress bar is going ever so slow.
Updating template.
And then it switches to a different progress bar, and he's just like freaking out. Like such artificial tension for trying to shut down a Windows 3.1 program.
Well, there was kind of a technology mashup happening here.
Well, yeah. So it looks like they were using Windows 3.1 as their operating system, but
it was also kind of Mac OS stuff going on.
It was just non-proprietary enough that they didn't have to pay anybody for it. Yeah, it had a lot of the Mac like looking stuff, but it was clearly built on DOS, because kids back in the day, you couldn't just, 1, leave your computer running 24/7, or 2, you couldn't just push the power button to turn the thing off. That was not a thing. You had to carefully close and save every program and every file that you had open, and then exit the operating system to get to the operating system that ran underneath that before it was safe to turn the computer off.
Okay, and that actually plays into the plot kind of importantly, that the thing that they were doing was some kind of software that got uploaded onto mainframe computers, but the evidence of it was stored locally in that building. So the fact that the building burned down destroyed the evidence of what they had done.
That's not to mention the fact that their entire job was updating software for the Y2K bug.
Yeah. But now, if you burn down a building, like that's not going to destroy evidence of anything. It's already in the cloud, man.
Yeah, that did absolutely nothing. Good job. Oh, then how did they get that virus from one place to another, Ben? Did they email it to each other? Did they upload it to a file share
on
store?
Floppy disks, and there was that classic scene where they're like passing floppy disks to each other.
2.8 megabytes? So it was more than that. How much was on a 3.5-inch floppy disk?
So we'll come back to the printer, but there was one deep cut I found when one of the screenshots they showed. The path that they were storing the virus to, it was CLR427 virus CDEF, and that's actually a reference to a real virus that affected Macintoshes back in 1990. It infected desktop files and caused system crashes, anomalous behavior, and printing problems. It's obsolete and mostly harmless, but at the time that was a legit virus.
Good reference there. So that means that they had one nerd on the crew that was planning for the screens, or they said they gave it to a department like, hey, we need something to show up on the computer screens, make it good. And they did everything they could to make it look real and authentic.
Yep. And that's hard. I mean, there's a few notorious examples, like some Rihanna video where she's texting, and if you zoom in on her phone, it's an Excel spreadsheet.
Oh yeah. Like it's little things like that are so easy to get wrong. I don't know. You talk to people that make movies, and they always mention stuff like that where they have to improvise crap on the fly all the time. And that's one of the things. If you're not prepared to film a scene with Rihanna sending a text message, and you get the angle of the camera wrong and nobody thinks what's actually on her phone, then nerds on the internet are going to pick it up frame by frame like, she's typing in an Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah. Okay, so the printer scene. We need to talk about the printer scene because that's another thing that's a meme. So at the end of their time there, Peter steals the printer that's kind of been this source of minor jokes and constant frustration. That there's this device in the office. That was another thing that was amazing to me from a prop perspective. Like this thing that was sucking the paper in and out. Like how would you design a thing that looked like a regular printer but was doing that kind of stuff?
That scene, not that scene, but the first scene that Samir interacts with this printer, that lives rent free in my head forever. Why does it say paper jam when there is no paper jam? Like I yell that at any printer that ever does that ever forever. And
then another improvised line by Michael Bolton's character when he looks at it and he's like, PC load letter.
What the F does that mean? So so the printer served a couple of purposes. One, it was again just comedy gold because everybody's been in a situation where they're frustrated with a thing that's just supposed to do the thing and it's not doing the thing. And so, like, the first time, it just adds to the whole feeling of being in an office and just hating all the little minor inconveniences that drive you crazy day to day. And that's Samir dealing with the paper jam. And then the characters were having a real conversation about, like, the plot of the movie. And they were interrupted by the PC load letter error on the printer. And again, that just adds to this great general feeling of, this is what it's like being in an office where I'm having a conversation, but I hate this printer so much.
You don't even have to script it. I saw this great tweet once on the internet. It was like, I don't know what caused the artist to form the band Rage Against the Machine, but I guess it was probably a printer.
Yeah. And so, yes, like you were talking about, they stole the printer. On their last day, Peter steals the printer.
And went out in the field and beat it up with a baseball bat.
It adds almost nothing to the movie, but they just decided to take 3 minutes and just destroy a piece of old technology.
It's become a meme. Like you can find templates of this meme out there on the internet of guys in a field, curb stomping a printer.
And they set it to the hardcore hip hop song "Die Mother Effer Die." Like it was perfect.
Yeah. So in that scene, I think they decided that the printer wasn't looking dramatic enough when they were hitting it with the baseball bat. So somebody went and got some extra circuit boards and put it in the pile.
I noticed that.
Not printer parts.
I noticed that too. It's like printers are not this full of stuff. There's like one tiny circuit board and a bunch of empty space, but it's fine. It added to the stuff flying up in the air.
Right. It's more of the bad technology. Also, a curiosity in that scene, Peter is never actually filmed striking the printer.
I noticed that. It was not... Peter didn't hate the printer. Peter was doing a nice thing for his friends. He brought a baseball bat and the printer. Here is everything you need to take all of your rage out on this machine. Like, he's really looking out for his friends in that.
While we're doing curiosities this time around, there was the scene right towards the beginning where Peter's frustrated and he takes Michael and Samir with him and they go across the street to Tchotchke's, and that's the first time we meet Joanna, and they order coffee and they only get coffee. In that scene, Michael Bolton is putting sugar packets into his coffee. I'm like, man, he's done a lot. So I wound it a little bit and I counted, and he put 5 sugar packets into his coffee.
I do about that much sugar in my coffee.
You do it on purpose.
Yeah, that's the real thing.
There's one really great curiosity I found in all of this. So someone kind of asked the question, like, is this a different version of the human story that's recurred throughout history, the Wheel of Time? Is this story of achieving the dream of what you want and then having it and being frustrated with it? Is this the first time we've told this story? And someone found another story. It's a story by Herman Melville, author of Moby Dick, called Bartleby the Scrivener. Scrivener is like a law clerk.
Yeah.
And the central plot device in Bartleby the Scrivener is that one day he shows up to the work and someone asks him to do something and he says, "I'd prefer not to."
So yes, Office Space has been a thing at least since law clerks have been around.
Yeah. And, at the end of Bartleby the Scrivener, maybe Mike Judge considered this, was that he ended up in debtor's prison for not being able to pay his bills, and then he chooses not to eat, and he dies in prison. So that's the end of Bartleby the Scrivener.
Not as satisfying as an ending if Peter had died at the end.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about curiosities for a second, because one thing I noticed that I really liked, there's a scene in the second act where Peter shows up to work for unexplained reasons and just terrorizes the office in little ways. Like he took a power drill and took the doorknob off the door.
Cleaned a fish.
Cleaned a fish right there on his desk. He toppled the wall of his cubicle, and it's just like in the aisle. He like tore down. They put up a big old banner like corporations do. Like, when you're working,
this good for the company?
Ask yourself, is this good for the company? And he had on this big banner, and he just tore it down and shoved it in a trash can. And they went out of the way to show that everybody's seeing this happen. Everybody is watching him do these things, and no one says a word to him.
Yeah.
Like, he just terrorized the place. Like, it blew my mind, but it rang so true. It's like, you know what? Yeah, if somebody came in and started doing all this stuff, you would actively avoid them. Like, you would go out of your way because, like, they're breaking the rules so hard. I don't want to be anywhere even in their sphere of influence when the comeuppance starts falling down.
Just do not engage.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Oh, and then even Lumbergh came up and started talking to him with his wall of his cubicle and all of his papers, everything all over the floor, and has this interaction and gets completely dismissed by Peter. And then as Peter's walking away, Lumbergh kind of looks around like, I need to save face in the situation. He goes, "All right, good talk, Peter. I'll go ahead.
I guess we'll have someone come clean this up."
Yeah, we'll have someone come clean this up for you. Like, as if it's all just part of the plan and we're totally still in control of the situation.
Yeah. There's the moment at the end when Peter has to, when he decides that he's going to face this thing head on, that he's dragged Michael and Samir into this, and that he doesn't want them to go down in flames, so he's going to take the blame. He considers just running, but he decides to face up to it like a man. I kind of enjoyed that about his character, that he'd done something illegal. Joanna was like, so you're stealing a bunch of money? I was like, no, it's much more complicated than that. And he explains it. She's like, so you're stealing a bunch of money.
So you're gonna get a bunch of money. Yes, that's not yours. Well, it becomes ours. Okay. How is that not stealing?
Yeah, exactly. So Peter has what I like to call an Abraham moment. In the biblical story of Abraham, God commands Abraham to kill his only son Isaac, take him up on the mountain and sacrifice him in ritual sacrifice like the Jews do. So he goes to do it, and then when he raises the knife in the air, an angel of the Lord comes and tells him he doesn't need to do it, and the Lord was just testing him.
My favorite thing about that story is there's a one-panel comic of Abraham and Isaac coming down the mountain after that happened, and the only text is from Isaac going, "What the hell was that about?"
I'm sure that was a problem. But I like to use this in my real life when there's a sacrifice I was willing to make and then the circumstances change and I don't have to make it. Like, for instance, let's say I was going to give up a round of disc golf and go help someone move, and I get to their house and the truck is already loaded.
Aw.
So I went there with the intent, I raise up the knife, and then I don't have to follow through on it. So Peter's Abraham moment is that he was deciding he was willing to go to jail. He was willing to fess up to his boss, to turn the money back over, to confess to this felony crime, and potentially go to jail in order to protect his friends. So he was willing to do that, and then he didn't have to do it.
That was after they tried to explore their possibilities of laundering the money to try to conceal that they had stolen it in the first place. And yeah, they went through this whole thing of trying to figure out what does money laundering mean. And this is why, listeners, it's important to know a tax professional. Had they known an accountant in their circle, they would have cleanly explained all the steps you would need to take in order to launder the money to conceal its origin.
Okay, here's another good example of bad at technology. In 1999, if you wanted to look up something like how to launder money, how do you do it? Now it's trivial.
Yeah, they looked it up in the
dictionary.
In a hardcover version of the dictionary, which I know we have a copy of in my house, but there is no chance that I'm going to be able to find it. Do people even have or buy dictionaries anymore?
Yeah, my wife does. Next topic. But I don't know, they thought looking up money laundering in the dictionary would provide some useful insight. And then an unemployed software developer knocks on the door selling magazine subscriptions and gives them some advice. All right, what would you say is the moral of the film? What is the tagline of what it is they want you to take away from it?
If there is a lesson that is to be taken away from this, it has absolutely nothing to do with the events in the film and everything to do with Peter's personal outlook on how he perceives his place in the world. Because that's what instigated this whole problem in the first place, is Peter was dissatisfied with the life that he had ended up in. Like, he did all the things that he said that he thought that he was supposed to do, and he ended up in this very unsatisfying place.
Yeah.
And this really was his reconciliation with, my life is not going to be this big imaginary thing that I thought it was going to be. And he just had to have this little crisis in order to come to terms with that. And so
it's kind of timeless.
Yeah, if there is a moral to this, it's more about like how we deal with those problems, how we have to reconcile and accept and internalize, you know what? Maybe I'm not the hero of this story. Maybe I'm just one of the NPCs running along in the background, like running the shop or the inn or the tavern or something.
Yeah. There's a scene, I really like this scene. It's when Peter goes back with Michael to his apartment after Peter's kind of really gone off the track, and Michael's trying to get him back on the track. He's like, look, Peter. But Peter's already heard from the consultants. They told him that he's going to fire Michael and Samir and that Peter's going to get promoted. So Peter has this knowledge, but he hasn't broken it to Michael yet. And Michael's like, look, Peter, you got to get back on track or they're going to get rid of you here. You take it from me. I'm a good employee. And Peter already knows that the roles are reversed.
Yeah.
And he has this moment where he considers not telling him, and then he takes him to the bar, and he's already confessed to Michael, and Michael's got his head in his hands, and he's like, "What have I done? I'm losing my job. I thought I had this all figured out, and I don't." And then Peter says to Michael what I think is the moral of the film. I'm going to quote him. "We don't have a lot of time on this earth. We weren't meant to spend it this way. Human beings were not meant to sit in little cubicles staring at computer screens all day." That's not necessarily a timeless truth as much as it was Peter's truth. He liked fishing. He liked being outside. He had worked to achieve this thing that he thought he was supposed to have, but when he got it, he didn't want it.
I think you nailed it the second time. I don't know if that's the moral of the story, but that's Peter's truth that he had to accept and discover about himself. I think a better line that encapsulates the movie is Jennifer Aniston's line, where she says something to the, I don't have it in front of me. So she says to the effect, not everybody hates their jobs. That's why it's work. Like you just do it anyway. And I think that's what she said. Ooh.
Nice.
So it's
cool. Well, good role for our second protagonist.
Honestly, that's kind of where I've landed in this whole thing, Ben. It's just like I am fulfilled by the job that I do now. In that I don't hate it. I don't despise waking up and going to work every day. And so I have categorized that as a win. Like that is a win. I will get my fulfillment elsewhere. If my professional life is not going to make me feel as if I have achieved greatness in the world that I was promised as a kid, then I need to seek that elsewhere and stop trying to put all that onus on my professional life.
Well said, buddy.
That just means I settled, man.
So, Josh, at the end of this discussion, now I want to ask, because you recently got your certified public accountant credentials, and have there been any changes to your work life as a result?
I love how you tee up this question as if you don't already know. But that's good interviewing skills.
The listeners don't know.
Nice job, Ben. Yes. So I got my CPA, and for the last 5 years, I've been working at a very small enrolled agent firm, and we're very tax and like day-to-day accounting focused. Mm-hmm. And so I'm kind of maxed out in headroom. Like there's no more professional like development that can happen where I am currently. And so I was looking for other opportunities to try to get out there and expand my professional development awareness, because some stupid part of me still thinks I'm in the military. And if I stop progressing, then I'll die. Yes, I have to continue getting better. Like, I don't know if that'll ever stop. But I was
also get paid more.
I also get paid, which is that's the thing. I hope no one from my new job is listening to this episode specifically. But
this is way deep. They'd had to really be invested.
Yeah, that's true. So they asked me in the interview, like, "Oh, what motivates you? Is it money?" And I said, "What motivates me? Like, I would be lying if I said no. But it's not all about money. It's also about the progression and the development and like seeing where I can go." And I spun it very, very well because I'm good at making up stuff on the spot. Hence me being a co-host on this podcast. But I did actually interview and accept a job at a new CPA firm in Phoenix. I'm very excited. My official title on my business cards is now going to be manager. There are going to be junior accountants and tax preparation people underneath me that I will be responsible for looking at all their stuff, which listeners have been listening to this episode, and I'm on the side of Bill Lumberg and the Bobs talking about how the corporation has all these motivations and feelings. Yeah, that's because I'm that guy. And
awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm excited to both go to a place where I'm going to have more responsibility. I'll use more of my professional knowledge. And yes, I will be making more money.
All right. Well, I hope it doesn't turn into Office Space.
I'm going to tell you what I told them. You went
from working at home to commuting to an office again, right?
I haven't started commuting yet. The job doesn't start until November, but yes, I will commute every day.
All right, go ahead.
Okay.
Tell me what you told the Bobs.
I really discovered this, like, and I've mentioned this in every interview, talking about our Ikigai podcast episode. And what I've discovered about myself is that the only thing that I really have is my time. And so the onus is on me to sell that time to the highest bidder. That's it.
You know what? Know what, Josh? I think about that a lot too. That episode, I don't remember which one is that we talked about Ikigai. It was a while back here. Episode 96. And yeah, you talked about basically about our time. It's the only thing that we have. And that's kind of was one of the themes of this movie.
Yeah. So Peter wasn't fulfilled because he wasn't doing his Ikigai. Meanwhile, if he had known about Ikigai, he would have realized that he needed to work outside, which is what he settled on after the place burned down.
And stood there with a satisfied look on his face while he held the handle of a shovel, cleaning up the ashes of his former place of work. Well, listeners, if Office Space resonated with you, come on and tell us why. You can go on our subreddit or on our Facebook page and join in the discussion. Tell us what you think. We'd love to hear from you.
If you like what we do, consider sharing us with a friend. If you like us, maybe your friends will like us too. If you really want to show us some love, consider taking your phone out of your pocket and giving us a good review on the podcast player of your choice. It's phenomenal, the visibility we get from that. And if you want me and Ben to talk about 25-year-old movies as if they're fresh off the presses from now until the end of time, consider becoming a patron on our Patreon page.
And until next time, try to be a little less bad at magic.